once upon a time creatures. Humans are not just seen as legends, a fictional existence, but that's just a story of the past. It all started with a video when these creatures decided to appear in public. Humans called them genjin, which means legendary figures. The present era is considered an era of diversity. Genjin are gradually being recognized and becoming a part of human society, and schools are no exception. Keiki Private High School is said to have the most genjin, a type of demon. Attending this school is a human being, Utaka Shinsu, who currently looks quite sleepy. Every day it takes him about 2 hours to get to school. But he didn't mind as long as he could avoid his old friends. It wasn't because anything serious had happened. In fact, he used to really enjoy hanging out with them. However, he was always too concerned about what others thought, and having to read the atmosphere whenever he spoke made him increasingly insecure about himself. He chose this school hoping to make friends because there are many genjin here, and they are probably facing similar difficulties as him. Just like the girl standing next to me, who is currently bending the cupboard door. She is Tsumiki Ogami, his classmate and a genjin of the werewolf species. The nature and physical characteristics of a werewolf allow her to transform into a wolf, or possess supernatural powers on full moon nights. Living among humans would undoubtedly be even more difficult for her. He asked why she was bending the cupboard door so tensely, but she replied that it wasn't out of anger or anything. She was just trying to pry open the cupboard door so she could fit her favorite shoes inside without damaging them. However, Utaka reminded her that she was damaging school property. Immediately, she used her strength to fix the door. Utaka suggested that she put her shoes on top of the cupboard so she wouldn't have to bend the door every day anymore. She liked the idea and was about to pat him on the head to thank him, but Utaka recoiled in surprise. She paused and explained that she could control her powers. Yukata said that he was quite sensitive to other people's gazes, and what just happened wasn't because he was afraid of her or anything. He genuinely wanted to prove it. So Tsumiki gently patted his hand. She didn't mind at all because she understood that everyone is different. They introduced themselves to each other, then Tsumiki returned to the classroom. This was the first time Utaka had spoken to a genjin, and yet she was so friendly even though she was a werewolf. Tsumiki is extremely popular. The whole class was drawn to her and everyone wanted to strike up a conversation. But Utaka wasn't interested in that popularity. Just thinking about having to face constant curious stares was enough to give him a stomachache. The conversation then shifted to the topic of her cute shoes. Because there were no school-sized shoes that fit her large feet, Tsumiki proudly showed off her big toes even though they tore her socks. The whole class fell silent, but Utaka burst out laughing. Tsumiki wasn't angry at all. In fact, she laughed along with him. She even showed him the belt she used to keep her tail tidy. The school provided skirts specifically for Beastman students, but she still preferred wearing regular dresses. Then she offered to let Utaka try on the belt because she saw that he seemed interested. Utaka immediately and strongly refused, but he couldn't escape the scrutinizing gazes of everyone. Despite her fashion sense, Tsumiki comfortably shows off her toes. She doesn't seem too bothered by her unique nature and physique. One day, a question arose. Would Tsumiki transform into a wolf on the night of the full moon? The answer is no, because it depends on the individual. However, Utaka wonders whether such questions are actually appropriate. When a classmate asked if she ate human flesh, Tsumiki replied that werewolves no longer eat human flesh, but she still ate meat because she was a carnivore. Utaka understood that if she said it like that, it could easily be misunderstood by others. So he quickly added that if she really ate human flesh, she would be in prison already. The girls immediately understood, and Tsumiki, though embarrassed, was touched. One of the classmates, while searching for information about werewolves, showed Tsumiki a picture of a full moon on her phone. This made her howl so adorably that the boys wanted to film it. Rumors that Tsumiki would let out an adorable howl at the sight of a full moon quickly spread to other classes, causing her popularity to skyrocket tenfold. Male students from other classes came to ask for her contact information. There was even Moritaka Sanga, a vampire from another class who was overly confident when he came to ask Tsumiki for her number, but she called him an obstacle and told him to get out of her way. If you think she was angry, you're wrong, because she was actually just on her way to buy lunch and Sanga was blocking her way. Meanwhile, Utaka was reading messages in his old middle school group chat, where they were planning a class reunion, and everyone assumed that Utaka wouldn't be attending this time either. Despite being affected by it, he pretended not to care at all. Just then, Tsumiki appeared, covered in mud. The reason is that during lunchtime, the sandwich she ate was so delicious that she buried it in the ground to save it for later. After school, she went digging again but became too engrossed in it. She even warned Utaka that he should be careful because he might find himself in a similar situation. But Utaka was certain he would never fall into that kind of situation. Tsumiki didn't mind going home covered in mud. Even when Utaka offered to lend her his sports jacket, it made Utaka wonder how he could ever become like her. He was always mindful of how people looked at him and how they judged him. Being allowed to study at such a distant school was a chance for him to start over, to live true to himself. But the problem was he still didn't know what his true self was. Therefore, Tsumiki's ability to accept herself impressed him. Tsumiki thought that it was precisely because she was a genjin that things were so easy for her, while being a human was the difficult part. She offered to help him find his true feelings, but Utaka immediately refused, saying he could manage on his own. However, Tsumiki refused to give up because she truly valued the people around her, and Utaka had now become an important person to her. She even realized that the reason he chose a distant school was because he didn't want to run into certain people from his past, and she told him that directly. Once again, she suggested that even though they were two different species and might not fully understand each other, he should give her a chance to rediscover her true feelings with him. She held out her hand, making Utaka think it was a handshake. But then she unexpectedly lifted him up and headed towards the window, saying they should start right away and go home together. Why a window and not a front door, you ask? Because they'll jump through the window. Utaka naturally objected, but Tsumiki jumped down anyway. The experience left him stunned and nauseated, but it also gave him a feeling of freedom he had never experienced before. He used to think the classroom was huge, but when they leave it, it becomes small again. That experience is something he will remember for the rest of his life. Tsumiki took a light breath from him. It's not because you smell bad, but it's a type of greeting in the genjin world, meaning let's get along. After she left, Utaka received another notification from his old class group. While he was still hesitating about whether or not to attend the class reunion, he received his first message from Tsumiki. He recalled the moments he had just shared with her, and felt something that he himself couldn't quite name. The next day, Tsumiki found a letter next to her shoes, a thank you note from Utaka, along with a small gift placed in her locker. She ran excitedly towards the classroom, saying she hadn't finished hearing his story, and then invited Utaka to her house to play. The whole class turned to look at them when they heard the invitation. Immediately afterward, the boys dragged Utaka away. Even though he tried to explain that things weren't as they thought, that Tsumiki was just a friend, they wouldn't listen. Tsumiki then invited Utaka to her house on Saturday, but Utaka replied that he needed to check his schedule first. The real reason behind that evasive answer was that he felt pressured by the suspicious glances of the male classmates who were eavesdropping on their conversation. Despite politely refusing, Utaka was dragged away by the boys for questioning. They claimed they were only curious as fans of Tsumiki. Utaka insisted they were just friends, but his friends didn't believe him because Tsumiki had never invited any other friends to her house before. Utaka also couldn't bring himself to tell them the truth, that she invited him over only to help him find his true feelings. Even after returning to class, Utaka kept thinking about whether or not he should go to her house. Later that day, Utaka decided to tell Tsumiki that he wouldn't be able to come. She seemed serious when she said the decision was his. If he didn't want to come, then so be it. That made Utaka realize that he was once again being influenced by other people's reactions, so he quickly changed his mind and said he would come. Tsumiki happily left, not forgetting to remind him not to break his promise. Utaka was finally able to be honest with his feelings, and it was best not to look back. The boys looked like wandering ghosts at that moment. After school, Tsumiki and her friends went to the arcade. You asked if the boy who was invited to her house was her boyfriend. Tsumiki simply replied that he was just a friend. Her friend reminded her to be careful, even if it was just a friend. But Tsumiki wasn't worried at all, because she knew there was no way Utaka could resist her power. As Saturday arrived, Utaka was anxiously awaiting Tsumiki, worried about the visit. When Tsumiki appears in her everyday clothes, Utaka silently apologized to her fans in his heart for being the one to see her in that state. Tsumiki led him to a mountain and said that was where werewolves lived. To get to her house, they would have to climb a mountain. Utaka, tired, climbed the mountain with the help of a stick, while Tsumiki seemed unaffected. She was also covered in mud, but that's unavoidable when climbing mountains. Tsumiki justified this by saying that she's usually more careful with her uniform. But Utaka immediately reminded her that just the day before she had been covered in mud because of a sandwich. Tsumiki simply couldn't resist the allure of the food. Finally, they came before a large rock. Tsumiki tapped the rock lightly and it began to move, revealing a passageway. The one who pushed the rock was none other than a huge werewolf, but he said nothing. Inside the passageway lies an entire underground town. Werewolves used to dig burrows for self-protection, and this place seems to have retained that habit. After genjin gained recognition in society, they gradually ventured out into the outside world. But even now, many genjin children still prefer to live in seclusion. Tsumiki led Utaka back to her house, a small house. Despite the mess, everything felt very cozy. Utaka sat down on the ground, watching Tsumiki happily show off the socks he had given her. Instead of wearing them, she used them as decoration because she was afraid that wearing them would tear the precious gift. Several children rushed into Tsumiki's room and asked about Utaka. It seems Tsumiki has younger siblings. The older sister also ran after the two younger ones, but it appeared to be too late. Tsumiki excused herself, looking rather unhappy. Tsumiki and her third sibling competed in lifting rocks and climbing walls. The younger brother asked Utaka if he wanted to climb the wall with him, but Utaka refused because his legs had reached their limit. However, the older sister jokingly remarked that this wasn't something for humans to do. This surprised Utaka, who then decided to climb the wall. He thought, wherever you are, you blend in. After all the physical activity, Utaka was exhausted. His older sister approached him and asked if Tsumiki was okay living in the outside world. Utaka seriously replied that Tsumiki was doing even better than a human. It turned out that Tsumiki's younger sister was very worried about her because she had a more approachable personality, so everyone in the village relied on her. That's why their parents decided to let Tsumiki go out, hoping that if she thrived, other children would also have the courage to venture out into the world. She seems to be doing fine living outside, but nobody knows for sure if she really is. Utaka recalled Tsumiki saying that she felt comfortable with people who were comfortable with her, which also meant that there were still people who had issues with her. Nevertheless, she was still willing to step out into the world for the sake of others. Meanwhile, Utaka was engrossed in digging and realized how addictive it was. Tsumiki told him he could open up to her, and she would help him find his feelings. Utaka felt guilty because she had to shoulder so much on her own, and he had only added to her worries. He began to express his thoughts at length, but Tsumiki simply replied that she had no burdens to bear. She lived outside the world not for others, but to demonstrate her superiority over her younger sisters. She thought that if they wanted to learn about the outside world, she would be the one to teach them, so that they would rely on her. Tsumiki added that if there was anything she didn't like, she would simply leave the place, so Utaka didn't need to worry or feel too insecure. When they were together, Tsumiki asked Utaka how he was feeling at that moment. But Utaka didn't answer, as if he were frozen in place. After a while, he unexpectedly leaned in to sniff her, remembering that she had once said it was a way of greeting and showing a desire to befriend in the genjin world. Tsumiki was extremely surprised, but luckily Utaka quickly regained his composure and stepped back, saying that he hoped they could maintain this good relationship. Tsumiki then reminded them that people should maintain proper human greetings, as the recent behavior had truly surprised her. Hearing this, Utaka's face turned pale, and he frantically apologized. But Tsumiki didn't mind, even laughing because she had said the same thing to him before. It was getting quite late, so Tsumiki decided to see Utaka home. Her younger siblings also bid him farewell with strange looks. Utaka, who had adapted too much to local customs, felt incredibly guilty until Monday. It was an ordinary day, but it was impossible not to expect something. It was lunchtime, and this was Utaka's first time at the school cafeteria. The cafeteria was packed with people serving all kinds of food for both humans and genjin, and even had private areas where students could eat in privacy. Tsumiki was also in the cafeteria and happened to see Utaka. She asked him where he usually ate, since she never saw him eat in class. Utaka told Tsumiki that he usually eats lunch in a secluded spot, and Tsumiki seemed very eager to see it. She also suggested he buy a fried meat sandwich, which is only sold on Fridays. When she mentioned sandwiches, Utaka noticed her tail wagging excitedly. But then he reminded me that today was only Wednesday. Immediately, he noticed her tail drooping along with her declining mood. Feeling guilty, he promised to try it next time. On their way to the secret dining spot, they unexpectedly encounter Sanga, the vampire Tsumiki had previously refused to give his phone number to. He was with a girl and intended to drink her blood, but the girl was interested in Sanga and wanted to talk to him first. Her eagerness, focused solely on his blood, angered her, and she slapped him across the face before leaving in tears. Sanga didn't seem to mind at all. He casually pulled out his phone to find a replacement. He was extremely confident and didn't hesitate, even on the second meeting, to compliment his own good looks. Utaka was somewhat impressed by that confidence, but Tsumiki was completely unfazed and just keep moving forward calmly. Utaka wanted to stop her, but Tsumiki said that blood is food for Sanga, and sometimes diversity is a good thing. As Utaka glanced through Senga's phone, he noticed that vampires usually write their blood type right before the name of each contact in their address book. Sanga remembered that Tsumiki was the one who had refused to give him her phone number. She apologized, saying that she was irritable and behaved rudely because she was hungry that day. However, he said that he had been hurt and that she could make up for it by giving him blood to drink. He argued that as a genjin, Tsumiki should understand the pain of hunger. Utaka thought that even if Sanga was hungry, he shouldn't make such a request. But Tsumiki didn't mind because she believed that anyone who was hungry should eat when they had the chance. Sanga began drinking her blood, causing Utaka to turn her face away. He understood that humans also needed to eat, and perhaps genjin faced even more inconveniences when it came to choosing food. Those feelings as a human being he couldn't fully understand. Tsumiki noticed he was lost in thought and called his name. Her face was flushed red, which startled Utaka, who quickly separated the two of them. Utaka then realized what he had done and quickly apologized, bowing deeply in apology. Sanga said that Utaka should admit he was jealous because he didn't like what he had just witnessed. Utaka's face turned pale and he hastily denied it, saying it was ridiculous that he would act that way just because they were close friends. Sanga found Utaka annoying because he thought that an ordinary person didn't need to go through so many complicated emotions. Just then another girl arrived, so Sanga left with her. It was time for lunch. Utaka told himself that he shouldn't overthink things and that Tsumiki was only being nice to him because she was kind. He asked if her neck was alright, and Tsumiki replied that werewolves have amazing regenerative abilities. Then she showed him her neck. There were absolutely no signs of being bitten. However, Utaka covered his face for a different reason. He had now begun to notice Tsumiki's skin, even though he didn't want to. That moment had become an unforgettable memory. Now it was time for the picnic to begin. Tsumiki, being an energetic person, was extremely excited about the trip, but Utaka wasn't interested at all. He knew that picnics were usually meant to strengthen friendships, but to him, it felt forced, too rushed. Tsumiki said that if they were grouped together on the picnic, they should enjoy themselves and eat delicious food. Utaka agreed, but secretly harbored negative thoughts that they might not end up in the same group. Tsumiki then showed him an advertisement for a dish she wanted to try on the trip. On the day of the picnic, luckily they were actually assigned to the same group. Besides them, Sanga was also in the group, which caused them to attract unnecessary attention from others. The other two members are Sugimi, a human, and Kitu, an invisible being. No one in the group had a specific idea about where to go, so Tsumiki took on the responsibility of planning the whole day. Sanga wanted some free time after lunch, so Tsumiki arranged the schedule to allow for a break before regrouping. With Tsumiki around, everyone felt safe, especially at the amusement park. They started with thrill rides, and Tsumiki behaved extremely friendly towards the park staff. Sanga then spoke up, saying there was no need to be so overly kind, since those people were paid to be friendly. This made the atmosphere awkward. Sanga went on to say that everyone weighs the pros and cons in relationships, even when interacting with others. For example, he only goes with the group to avoid attracting attention from the girls. Kitu reminds Sanga to be careful lest he attract even more attention than the mascots in the park. However, Sanga is very confident that he will not be outdone by a mascot that is just a person in costume. At that moment, a shocking truth stunned Tsumiki. She had always believed that mascots were real living beings. During their free time, Utaka and Tsumiki still went together because Tsumiki wanted to try the food from the commercial she had seen. She even knew the way to the store because she had prepared beforehand. Although this was her first time at an amusement park, she had been familiar with the outside world since she was a child. However, getting permission to go out has never been easy. Because she was so excited about this trip, she made a detailed plan on paper. He even decided that he would come back here later with his younger sister. Utaka initially thought Tsumiki had been to the park before, based on her confident demeanor. Utaka was certain that her friends had invited her here before, but it turned out she had never been allowed to enter this park. It was impossible to accomplish everything on the plan, but Utaka still wanted her to try. Tsumiki tried the dish she had been looking forward to, but it tasted terrible. She even pointed it out in front of the shop owner and other customers. Utaka hurriedly pulled her away to salvage the situation, while she continued to complain about the terrible food. Utaka read through her plan and said they would try to participate in as many games as possible. Tsumiki was touched and agreed. When they returned to meet the group, both were incredibly excited. They planned to play one last game with the whole group and then buy souvenirs. However, Sanga wasn't there. Tsumiki really wanted to play this game with the whole group because it would capture that moment in a photograph. Utaka took out his phone to call him, but Tsumiki spotted Sanga standing in the crowd. What shocked the group was that Sanga was crying, tears welling up in his eyes. He said he was going home. Something strange had happened to Sanga, who was usually so calm and confident. Let's wait and see what the reason behind those tears is. Utaka decided to make today a fun day since it was Tsumiki's first time at an amusement park. While they were enjoying themselves, Sanga came running up crying and said that he was going home. The Japanese phrase "I'm going home" is a homonym for frog, so Tsumiki deliberately changed the subject by saying that Sanga was looking for a frog and started searching around. Utaka was surprised thinking Sanga was with friends, so he asked Sanga why she wanted to go home. However, Sanga cried even louder, making Utaka hesitant to ask further. He was truly shocked because Sanga was usually very confident and accepting of himself as a vampire. Yet today, he was completely devastated. Utaka thought it might be better to give Sanga some space because sometimes people just don't want to talk. However, they needed to take a group photo, so Utaka decided to carefully ask about the reason and whether Sanga could share it, as it would be sad if the picnic ended like this. Sanga later recounted that the person he trusted and thought was a friend had only taken advantage of him. His friend had deceived him, luring him into going for a walk around the park with him. Sanga confided all his depressing thoughts to Utaka, making Utaka wonder why he had become so negative, and where was the bright, confident person he always was. Sanga said that he had encountered many similar cases, but at this school he hoped that he could finally have a true friend. Because of his vampire nature, girls are often attracted to him, while boys are jealous, causing him to be constantly taken advantage of and making it difficult for him to find someone he can trust. Utaka thought that even though Sanga always seemed to be surrounded by people, he was actually very lonely. Sanga's acceptance of himself doesn't mean he doesn't have anxieties. Utaka felt happy that Sanga had taken the initiative to open up and share everything with him, so he started thinking about what he could do to help him. But Tsumiki suddenly asked what about them, since they had all spent the whole day playing together in the park. So why didn't Sanga consider them friends? But Sanga refused, saying how could he trust them? That it was just a coincidence that they were placed in the same group. Hearing this, Tsumiki couldn't help but tell him straight to his face that he was a real nuisance. Utaka tried to handle the situation, saying that it was quite complicated and Sanga might have his own circumstances, but Tsumiki thought it was a great opportunity to make friends. He was always suspicious of everyone, which was why he couldn't make friends with anyone. It was strange that he thought others would betray him. She also mentioned that she had once given him blood to drink, so why couldn't they still be friends? Sanga argued that she gave him her blood because she was a girl and had fallen in love with him. Hearing this, Tsumiki became furious, grabbed him by the collar and demanded that he quickly win her over with his true nature, because he had decided on their relationship without any thought, which disgusted her. Utaka tried to stop her, saying that Sanga had just gone through a breakup, but Tsumiki also stopped when she saw Sanga looking at her with an admiring gaze. Tsumiki continued to urge Sanga to quickly make her fall for him, while Sanga replied that he was already doing so. His naturally captivating scent always works, yet strangely she still hasn't fallen for him. Even after he had sucked her blood and even now that they were standing so close together, she still hadn't felt anything. Sanga also suggested that perhaps deep down, she had fallen in love with him without realizing it, but Tsumiki immediately denied it. When she heard Tsumiki refuse, Sanga felt incredibly happy. She even called him Country Bumpkin. That made him even happier because no one had ever spoken to him so directly before. Everyone had always only said kind things, so hearing such contradictory words felt completely new to him. The whole group boarded the final roller coaster ride, Sanga followed, and the three of them took a photo together. Sanga admired himself in the photo and marveled at how photogenic he was, then asked Tsumiki if she felt any attraction. She countered by asking if he was still worried about it. Later, she wondered why Sanga was on the same bus as them when he wasn't in the same class, and Sanga replied that he had asked to switch seats. Eating snacks with friends on the bus had always been his dream, so this time he tried his best to make it a reality. He shared his snacks, even giving Utaka a portion, which shocked Utaka. Sanga said that Utaka was really insensitive when it came to relationships, and suggested that they could become friends. Utaka felt the remark was rude and was about to speak up, but at that moment someone called Sanga away. Tsumiki suggested Utaka tell Sanga that he didn't like what he just said, but Utaka simply said it was all right. Utaka asked Tsumiki if she intended to make friends. He thought that if she found Sanga annoying, she would have definitely ignored him. Her cold attitude towards Sanga was actually for his own good. But at that moment, Sanga interrupted the conversation. So Utaka gave up, thinking that perhaps he had been overthinking things. However, Tsumiki gently nudged Utaka's shoulder and gestured for him to be quiet, seeing her reflection in the mirror. Utaka thought to himself, she's so cool. While sitting in class, Utaka felt confused because Tsumiki had a serious expression on her face, but her tail was wagging excitedly, showing that she was happy and eager. She mumbled about sports, and Utaka finally realized she was thinking about the upcoming physical education class. Keiki High School has many large sports fields, and physical education classes are often held jointly. So many genjin, humans, gather together. Human students can choose to participate, observe, or learn independently, but according to Utaka, nobody can feel comfortable being stared at. So he began considering finding a discreet spot to observe, but worried that some people might hate being watched. While still hesitating, he decided to ask Tsumiki, but accidentally bumped into a girl walking by. They quickly apologized to each other. Then he realized the girl was Sugimi, who had been with the group on the field trip. Just then, Sanga came from behind and picked up the piece of paper she had dropped. The moment Sugimi saw that, she immediately wanted to disappear from the world. It turned out she was a genjin fan. Utaka tried to reassure her that many other people also loved genjin, so she didn't need to worry. However, Sanga subtly reminded her that Utaka was no different from her. In their panic, the two genjin lovers, afraid of disturbing others, started muttering incessantly, much to Sanga's annoyance. He said that if their intentions were good, then it was fine, and that touched both of them. But then Sanga's dark side was revealed when he said that it was precisely that good intention that was disgusting. Meanwhile, Tsumiki was playing baseball, holding the bat, and preparing to hit the ball. Genjin, who throws the ball, is a creature that resembles an octopus. Tsumiki receives the ball and prepares to attempt a home run. But a bird-shaped genjin positioned outside the field caught the ball mid-air. The group of 3 from the previous field trip were also standing outside watching the match. Utaka and Sugimi realized that the genjin really didn't care about being stared at. All 3 noticed that not only was Tsumiki playing her heart out on the court, but she was also incredibly full of energy. Utaka remarked that she looked really happy. Sanga suggested that she should join the match, but Utaka thought that the people who should participate were those who were capable and serious. Tsumiki noticed them and approached. She actually came to ask for advice because the genjin team on the other side had a very solid defense. She asked Sugimi for her opinion, but because she was such a big fan of genjin, Sugimi started to panic. However, Sugimi quickly regained her composure and presented her notes on the opposing team. Utaka and Sugimi worked together to help Tsumiki develop a strategy. When it was her turn to compete, Tsumiki happily hugged the two of them because she was sure she would win. Utaka reminded her that she hadn't won yet, but she was very confident in herself and told him to look at her carefully. So, Sugimi and Utaka had planned something for Tsumiki, who was giving her all in the basketball game. But after she started competing, they began to worry about their plans. Sugimi claims to be just collecting data on genjin as a hobby, while Utaka is worried because he's only watched a few matches and now he's interfering. What if Tsumiki loses because of incorrect information? Sanga tried to ease their anxiety by saying it was just PE class, and they were overthinking things. Furthermore, Tsumiki had told them to trust and observe her. At that moment, a few girls recognized Sanga and surrounded him. This caused the whole group to move closer to the arena to watch Tsumiki's match, while Sanga covered his face with his shirt to avoid attracting attention. An octopus-like genjin girl is planning her revenge against Tsumiki. If Tsumiki wins this match, it will be a spectacular comeback, but she doesn't intend to let that happen. She wanted to confuse Tsumiki, so that if Tsumiki became agitated, she wouldn't be able to control her power and would unleash it completely. Tsumiki recalled the plan she had discussed with Utaka and Sugimi, in which Utaka had asked her if it would be okay if she threw the ball this time. However, Utaka went on to say, pointing out a diagram of the court, that a large area of the outer court was reserved for the bird girl. If Tsumiki threw the ball, the opponent would trust the bird girl to catch it. Sugimi added that this was why the players on the sidelines were moving forward. Tsumiki, a wolf, was very strong, and they hoped the ball would fly far. Utaka agreed. They would probably prefer that to her hitting the ball strangely, causing it to roll on the ground. Catching a rolling ball would be difficult, requiring jumping or lunging forward. The scene shifts to the present where the octopus girl throws a ball. Tsumiki responded with a vertical swing of the ball, which caught his opponent by surprise. The others couldn't catch the ball in time. Tsumiki started running from the starting point. Sugimi and Utaka happily cheered her on. Tsumiki is also very fast when running, but when she's running in the middle of the road, the bird-like girl caught the ball and threw it at high speed, saying she wouldn't let Tsumiki score. Tsumiki recalled another plan of Utaka's. He knew what would happen next, and if anything unexpected occurred, she could use the time to adapt. He came up with a plan, thinking that if it was Tsumiki, everything would be fine. She ran, and as she approached the house, she slipped and fell to the ground, placing her hand on the spot. But at that moment, the catcher caught the ball, and there was confusion about whether it was out or safe. The dust flew everywhere, obscuring everything. When the dust settled, everyone saw Tsumiki's fingernails touching the house, and she was very excited. Her supporters were delighted, and she gave all the credit to Sugimi and Utaka. She waved, asking Utaka if he saw her. He nodded and waved back, smiling charmingly. She invited all her friends over to celebrate the victory. After the match, they walked back to the school building, with Tsumiki leading the way and the others following behind. Sugimi appreciated Tsumiki because she was really cool. Of all the genjin, she certainly possessed the highest physical prowess. Even a strong wind couldn't faze her. Tsumiki turned around and told Sugimi to remember to record that Tsumiki had scored a home run for the genjin team, and that she had also touched the house. As Tsumiki was about to touch her face, Utaka stopped her. He thought she was about to scratch herself. He reasoned that given her high self-healing ability, she might have grown 2 fingernails stuck in the house. She had long fingernails. She immediately hid her hands behind her back and told him not to look, because it made her feel embarrassed. She wondered if there were any nail clippers in the infirmary. Sugimi wanted to go with her to check there. Sanga and Utaka were both confused by the complicated standards she didn't care about, like messy hair and being covered in sand. This is the first time freshmen have had a cooking class. Tsumiki seemed quite uncomfortable, and Utaka asked her if she was all right. She replied that it was just a little itchy, as her fur sheds more in the summer, so she had to wear an ear flap hat to keep it in place. The octopus girl came and asked Utaka if he could handle an area with a lot of water, as she was afraid of electricity. He went there and thought that, depending on the nature and physical condition of each genjin, there would still be many inconveniences. Tsumiki arrived, drawing his attention when she showed him her gloves, with the fingers torn. He asked her if she had torn them herself. She proudly replied that the gloves were designed to withstand sharp fingernails, and she had torn them, meaning she was stronger than them. Utaka was surprised that she was competing even with the gloves on. The cooking class began. She held an egg in her hand, gently squeezing it to crack the shell. Then she poured it into a bowl. Utaka advised her that it might be better if she cracks the eggs on the table first. She agreed and cracked the eggs onto the table. Then he told her to handle the mixing, and she started mixing the ingredients at a very fast pace. He guided her through the mixing, and when it became lumpy, he told her to add more flour. He asked her to make cookies, and to do that, he asked her to roll out the dough. She followed the instructions and started shaping the dough, but the cake ended up being flattened. She was exhausted and collapsed to the ground. Utaka had to take over, saying he would handle the rest. She never imagined that cooking would require such finesse. Earlier, she had boasted to her younger siblings that she would bring home some sweets. Utaka encouraged her to bring the cakes home since they had made them together, but Tsumiki had self-respect. She wanted to make something herself, otherwise she wouldn't be worthy of being an older sister. That evening she went home, and despite her attempts to lie about bringing the cake, her siblings figured it out. The next morning she took a bag of ingredients and went to school. In class, Utaka noticed that she was carrying a bag and wasn't paying attention because she was reading something. The teacher called her name to ask her a question, but as she awkwardly prepared to apologize, Utaka quickly answered for her. And he even secretly showed her the page they were studying. He offered to help her by suggesting she let him know if she needed his assistance. In the kitchen, she baked another batch of cookies, and this time a few didn't burn. Seeing them bake evenly, she was very happy. When she took the tray of cakes out, her finger got burned, but she only hoped the wound would heal quickly. She packed the cookies in a bag, thinking that this would be enough to take home for the children. On her way home, she saw Utaka still in class and asked if he had been punished. Utaka replied that he was on duty and had a mountain of work assigned by the teacher. She went into the classroom, sat down, and remarked that he certainly worked hard. He asked her if she could bake cookies, and she happily nodded and showed him her creation, proudly saying that they looked pretty good. But Utaka quickly realized her hand was burned, so he took out a bandage to put on it. She said the burn would heal quickly. But he gently replied that the burn would heal, but her efforts would not disappear. He hesitated, then added that using a bandage might not be the best way to treat a burn. But she told him to go ahead, because she had never used adhesive bandages before. She sat on a chair next to his desk, resting her hand on the table so he could easily bandage it. Utaka gently peeled off the bandage and applied it to her burn. As a thank you, she gave him a leftover cookie she had made. She blushed as she left the classroom after handing out the cookies, while Utaka secretly thought that she had put a lot of effort into making them. When she got home, her siblings asked if she seemed to be in a very good mood today, and if something good had happened, but she just shook her head in denial. The next morning, Tsumiki arrived at school almost on time and felt very excited about achieving the perfect attendance title she was aiming for. On her way to class, she happened to see a crow perched on the school roof. Looking closer, she discovered that the crow had stolen Mire's special glasses. This is a serious problem because Mire is a Medusa. She has hair made entirely of snakes, and her gaze can turn anyone to stone if they look directly at her. Mire, being a kind person, warned Tsumiki to stay away from her. But Tsumiki still tried to get her glasses back and failed. Therefore, that day's class meeting was changed to the mission of rescuing Mire's glasses. Mire repeatedly apologized for causing trouble and thanked the class for their cooperation. She even designed a detailed plan to get her glasses back. Meanwhile, Tsumiki was determined to catch the crow that had flown away from her. Mire became the commander of the search operation. Because crows love to collect shiny objects, she handed everyone small shovels and asked them to work in pairs. Despite not wearing glasses, she organized her work meticulously, even giving Tsumiki gloves to protect her hands from getting calloused, making Utaka wonder if Mire was Tsumiki's mother. While Mire and Utaka were bending down to search, Mire accidentally moved her hand unexpectedly. Utaka immediately reached out to help her, but this action startled Mire. This caused the snakes on her head to become aggressive. Utaka quickly apologized, and Mire explained that the snakes would become aggressive whenever she was surprised, and asked for his understanding. Understanding her true nature, Utaka gently apologized once more. Meanwhile, Tsumiki was also extremely determined to find the crow, as she had a personal vendetta against it from the last time it stole her hamburger. Tsumiki and Utaka were trying their best to find the glasses when Sanga appeared. They told him what had happened, and Tsumiki immediately asked for his help, but the whole class objected to Sanga's help and pulled Tsumiki towards themselves, as if trying to protect her from a wolf, even though Tsumiki herself was a wolf. It was almost time for the next class, so Mire reminded everyone to go back, but the whole class said they would continue searching until the very last minute because the situation was urgent. Mire was deeply moved to see everyone trying so hard for her, and longed to see their efforts reflected in her. She also feared that if she couldn't find her glasses, she might never see her friends' faces again. Just then, Tsumiki spotted the crow and immediately chased after it. She retrieved her glasses but then slipped and fell from the tree. However, thanks to her werewolf reflexes and Utaka's support below, she landed safely. Even though Tsumiki was able to land safely on her own, Utaka still rushed to save her. The glasses were returned to their owner. Mire put them back on. Despite feeling embarrassed, she sincerely thanked everyone for their help. Then, Tsumiki called Utaka over and patted him on the head as a compliment for his life-saving catch. Utaka laughed and said that he had actually completely missed the catch. Despite the rain, today was a wonderful day for Mire Medusa, as the pleasant humidity made her feel comfortable, and she also enjoyed the sound of the rain. However, the snakes on her head didn't like getting wet, so she needed to take good care of them. When Mire arrived at the school gate, she received a message informing her that the school was closed today due to the weather. She had already arrived at school, so she decided to go inside, but she wasn't the only one. Tsumiki was also at school, but she was soaking wet and dirty. She's the type who wears a raincoat and loves playing in the rain. Her condition suggests she had a great time playing in the rain. The reason she stayed at school was because she didn't check her phone very often. She was completely soaked, so Mire tried to dry her off with a towel. Tsumiki continued to undress to dry herself, but Mire stopped her and told her not to, because they were still in the hallway. Utaka was also on his way to school, but Mire ordered him to stop immediately. He was so surprised that his mind and body froze, unsure of how long he would have to stay. In the women's changing room, Tsumiki was drying her clothes. Mire reminded her to be more restrained and think carefully before acting. The reason she said that is because she thinks that humans and genjin are too different physically and in terms of value. Therefore, they shouldn't act so freely even if they may be getting along with humans at the moment. Tsumiki listened attentively to her, then remained silent for a while before leaving. Utaka found Mire in the classroom, licking her tongue just like her snake and other snakes. When she recognized Utaka, she apologized for acting that way. Utaka apologized for startling her. Mire asked about Tsumiki and told him about the previous lesson, feeling embarrassed for being too blunt and thinking that Tsumiki was angry with her. Utaka said that Tsumiki was wonderful and kind, and he was certain that Tsumiki had another reason for leaving like that. So the two of them decided to follow the trail of water to find her. Finally, they found Tsumiki in the sewing room, and she was as usual, not angry at all. She also apologized for leaving like that, but said she had to because the rain was getting heavier. She made clothes for the snakes using her new socks because she realized the snakes were hiding due to the rain and thunderstorms. Tsumiki thanked Mire for warning her and worrying about her. Mire had always been so indulgent towards Tsumiki, so Tsumiki wanted to repay her. Just then, the teacher arrived and told the three of them to go home. Mire said that today was a beautiful day and she felt free to walk in the rain, while Tsumiki held an umbrella for her. Utaka watched the two of them and thought how harmonious they were. Sugimi Michi is a huge fan of genjin, a term for talented and influential people in the entertainment industry. She recently joined the journalism club and is currently tasked with interviewing genjin. The students at Keiki High School all have a positive view of the relationship between humans and genjin, and Mire is grateful that they are always happy to answer every question she has. Today is the day Sugimi will interview her most admired person, a wolf girl named Tsumiki Ogami. She's popular, cheerful, and friendly, so Sugimi is sure Tsumiki will greet her with a bright smile. However, what she found was quite the opposite. Tsumiki was complaining, a rare sight. When Sugimi asked for the reason, Tsumiki replied that Utaka was sick and absent today. Sugimi understood that the wolves cared deeply about their pack, so no matter what, Tsumiki was happy to participate in the interview and ask what they would talk about. Sugimi replied that they couldn't follow the conversation as a regular interview, as the genjin were very different from each other, like the famous vampire Sanga and his alluring scent. Tsumiki told her about the time she shared her blood with Sanga and was instantly healed thanks to his superhuman regenerative abilities. Sugimi was shocked to learn about this and asked her where he had bitten her. Tsumiki said he bit her on the neck, and she didn't object because he looked very hungry. Sugimi became angry and cursed Sanga for biting such a sensitive part of Tsumiki's body. Their conversation continued when a boy came in asking about Utaka. He had come to return a dictionary he had borrowed from Utaka and left on his desk. Then, another student came and gave him some candy as a thank you for helping him. After a few such instances, Utaka's desk was piled high with things people had left behind. Perhaps it was simply his nature to always be ready to help others when needed. Finally, the class monitor came and gave Tsumiki copies so she could give them to Utaka at his house. Tsumiki arrived at Utaka's house, and a little girl opened the door. She was Utaka's younger sister, Yu, and informed Tsumiki that their parents weren't home. Then, the little girl ran inside and told her brother that his friend had arrived. Yu crawled up from the first floor, and Utaka told Yu not to go upstairs. He saw Tsumiki and told her to leave the prince at the door because he had been told not to come down due to a fever. Tsumiki suggested going upstairs instead because she had a high immunity and couldn't possibly get sick. Utaka agreed, so Tsumiki went up to Utaka's room. Tsumiki continued to give Utaka copies and other things that people had left on his desk. Utaka seemed a little dreamy and not thinking too much about his personal space. Tsumiki noticed this difference and thought it might be because he had a fever. Utaka wanted to get something from a high shelf. Tsumiki offered to help, but Utaka said he could do it by himself. Tsumiki was surprised but still helped Utaka, saying that he should ask for help when needed. Utaka requested one more thing, to put cooling gel patches on his forehead and neck. He even guided her through each step, knowing that Tsumiki had never used them before. Tsumiki followed the instructions and applied the gel patches to Utaka's forehead and neck, while reflecting on Sugimi's words that these were important positions and should only be revealed to trusted individuals. When she finished her work, Tsumiki felt very embarrassed and said she would go home. On the way home, she kept thinking about that awkward moment. The next day, Tsumiki was very excited because tomorrow was Keiki High School's sports festival, an event she had been looking forward to for a long time. As a member of the sports committee, she had to cheer for her blue team. However, all her excitement suddenly turned into horror. When her sharp fingernails scraped against the blackboard, creating a jarring sound, she was the one most affected by it. At the end of May, the biggest event of the first semester was Kake High School's sports festival. Even the general public was welcomed as spectators. Food stalls from the school cafeteria were very popular, and of course the purpose of the event was to deepen the relationship between genjin and humans, as announced on the school's website. But it was a festival anyway. If Utaka was looking forward to the fun part of the festival, right now he was carrying a box of decorations and walking around the school grounds. At that moment, Tsumiki called out to him. She was hanging from the tree like a monkey. She was working on the tree decorations but advised Utaka to go home early and save his energy for the main event. Utaka replied that the teacher had asked him to bring the decorations if he was missing any. Tsumiki climbed down because she needed some flags from the decorations. She asked Utaka if he was feeling better, as he had to start practicing for the sports festival right after recovering from his illness. Utaka said he felt fine and also thanked her for bringing him the materials. Tsumiki noticed that the flags were tangled together, and Utaka seemed to notice as well as he began to untangle them, telling her that his memories of the past were a little hazy, but that he felt he had been spoiled too much. He thought there was a big difference between relying on someone and being spoiled, so he apologized for his actions. However, Tsumiki didn't mind, because she thought that this event had brought about the emotions she wanted to experience with everyone else. And since tomorrow is the sports festival, she's sure there will be a lot of different emotions, so she's determined to find out what Utaka is feeling. Utaka thanked her, although he thought those feelings were only possible because Tsumiki had feelings for him. On his way home, a text message from someone made his heart freeze, saying that she would be attending the sports festival. The entire school was packed for the sports festival, and Mire had been chosen as this year's sports representative, so she was giving the opening speech. Even Tsumiki was impressed by Mire's confidence. But all efforts were in vain when Mire bit her tongue in the middle of her speech. After she finished speaking, the team asked if she was okay, but Mire seemed unfazed by the mistake, as she maintained a serious demeanor. The entire team was once again impressed by her composure and confidence. Tsumiki gathered everyone into a circle, but noticing Utaka was daydreaming, she called him aside. Tsumiki pulled him closer and sat next to him, but the boys in the class weren't happy about it, and that disrupted their preparations for the match. Anyway, all the enthusiasm seemed to be focused on Utaka before the sports festival. The teams were divided into red, blue, and yellow, and the matches began. Tsumiki invited Utaka to sit with her and watch from the front row. The first member of the blue team was Tsumiki, a genjin with a flexible and strong physique. Tsumiki said that with all her arms, this challenge would certainly be no problem for her, but the first challenge was a net. And she got caught in the net in a terrible way. Next up is Suiki 2, an invisible person. He always dresses in a way that allows others to see his location. The next game is candy hunting. They had to blow powder to find the candy, but Sui took the game to a whole new level by eating the candy itself. The last person on the team is Hiyori Kurohane, a bird-type genjin. Tsumiki reminds her that flying is not allowed in this area, so she has to jump hard. The next competition is a bread-eating contest. Hiyori easily jumped up, munched on her bread, and ran toward the finish line. The blue team won these competitions, so they celebrated with a good start. This was Keiki High School's famous sports festival, but Utaka wondered if they had intentionally chosen such ordinary games. However, the teachers were pleased that nothing unusual had happened so far. Tsumiki invites Utaka to the next event as they will both be participating, but they are stopped by two girls who threaten Tsumiki with a needle. Utaka and Tsumiki didn't know who they were, but the boys in the class were very excited to see these two girls standing in front of them. One of them is Kiba Kinami, a half-mermaid who has 150,000 followers on TikTok. Every video she posts goes viral because she's beautiful and cool. Utaka can feel the heat radiating from the guys when they look at her. The second person is Roman Unami, a unicorn with 130,000 followers on Insight. Her gentle, pleasant voice makes her live streams on Insight very popular. She's so soft and cute that guys are completely captivated by her charm. However, the boys didn't forget about a rare animal, a species in need of protection, who had no interest in social media. Her innocence touched their hearts, for the person they were mourning was Tsumiki Ogami, a wolf girl. The boys were all thrilled to see the complete collection of the 3 beautiful freshmen from Keiki High School. Everything was so dazzling that they worried things had already reached a climax by morning. Konami squeezed Tsumiki's hand tightly and said that she had been waiting for this day for a long time, the day she could confront her directly. And since today was the sports festival, she could sting her as much as she wanted. Utaka noticed Konami's eyes becoming frantic, and she looked quite frightening at that moment. Surprisingly, Tsumiki was on the defensive, demanding that Konami let go. Unami, however, was enjoying the scene between the two, so Utaka asked her what was going on, but Unami also looked quite intimidating, as she was ready to stab him just for daring to speak to her. Tsumiki didn't understand what was happening, and Unami called Konami a battle-crazed fanatic, but she herself found it interesting, so she came to watch. Konami stated that she had come to declare war and threatened Tsumiki that she would crush her. Tsumiki is aiming for a victory for the blue team, her first sports festival since entering Keiki High School, but 2 assassins are standing in her way. What are they plotting? Next up was Keiki High School's physical education event, a ball-throwing chase game for first-year students. Each team captain would wear a basket on their back and run around without letting the ball get into the basket. The event area is a special stage at Keiki School. Everyone must use their physical abilities to the fullest. The team with the fewest balls in their basket wins. The captains of the blue, red, and yellow teams are all ready with their baskets. Tsugumi also seems to be a fan of these 3 captains. She wishes she had an extra pair of eyes to witness this rare moment. Of course, Tsumiki is her favorite, but today she's on Unami's team, so she encourages Utaka to do his best. Everyone's attention was drawn to a game of punishment, which Konami proposed. The losing team would have to do whatever the winning team asked, as this would create more punishments. While some might have remarked that Konami was a real troublemaker, Tsumiki was no less enthusiastic and accepted the challenge. Meanwhile, Utaka worried about Tsumiki and asked her if she understood what Konami had just said. The only thing Tsumiki could think of was skipping lunch, but both Konami and Unami said they wouldn't ask her to do that. They had decided what they wanted, but wouldn't tell her right now to save some suspense. Konami told Tsumiki to expect it after she lost. Tsumiki angrily said that Konami was talking as if she had already won. Finally, the ball chase game begins. The yellow team is in first place. Unami's agility makes it impossible for anyone to get the ball into the basket. She's trying her best to win Tsumiki's penalty game. Actually, the red team is in second place because Konami isn't running. She's just throwing the balloons at her. After a while, she felt exhausted, so she asked for a bottle of water and poured it all over herself. She was now fully conscious and continued chasing after Tsumiki. Utaka felt confused like most of us, but Tsugumi explained to them that the bottle contained seawater. That's Konami's mermaid nature. When she bathes in seawater, her strength is enhanced, but without seawater, she feels as weak as a dried fish. Utaka finally understood that Konami's fast throws were due to that power boost, but the spin was too strong, so he warned Tsumiki to avoid them. However, Tsumiki started catching all the balls flying towards her, and they're even quite excited about it, so the blue team is definitely at the bottom of the table. When the announcement that the blue team was in last place shattered Tsumiki's excitement, and she started running. Konami caught up with her and told her to stop. Tsumiki asked why she was the one throwing the ball when it was a running game, and why she couldn't run. Konami said it was fine, since no one said they couldn't throw the ball, and she believes the game wouldn't be fun without fighting to the best of her ability. Tsumiki jumped down from the net, surprising Konami with her speed. She quickly grabbed the net again and threw the ball into Konami's basket, saying they needed to play on a fair playing field, because she also wanted to fight in the same way. This new challenge excited Konami immensely, and she agreed with Tsumiki. Never before has there been a match like this, where the 2 captains are engaged in an incredibly intense battle for points. They were almost out of time, but the other students couldn't keep up with these 2 sports fanatics. Utaka was curious about the yellow team and found their leader, Unami, resting with Tsugimi because she was also tired. Unami said that although Konami loved fighting, she had so much strength and stamina that no one could fight her until she was satisfied, and most people just gave up without trying. Utaka also recalled how they had both become interested in the game before. Unami went on to say that Konami was always looking for a friend who could play with her all the way to the end. Utaka agreed that they were both wonderful. Konami fell face down, so Tsumiki ran over to ask if she was okay. Konami admitted that this was the first time she had played to such exhaustion, and it was the most amazing feeling of struggle. Both Unami and Tsumiki smiled affectionately at her. However, Unami managed to throw a ball into Tsumiki's basket at the last moment. She said that carelessness was the final boss. Therefore, Tsumiki lost the match. After the intense battle, they took a commemorative photo. And Tsumiki's punishment was to film a dance video with Konami. Sugimi was very excited that Tsumiki would be appearing in a dance video, and she thought the dance video would become a special collector's item. Utaka felt a little worried about this, but Sugimi had already started filming the video. Konami told Tsumiki to start, and although she didn't understand all the dance steps, she still performed exceptionally well. The performance was so cute that Sugimi wanted to upload the video and ask Tsumiki if she had permission. Tsumiki had no problem with it, and Unami enjoyed her fluid transformation. Konami also posted the video with the hashtag dancing with my comrade, and as soon as the video was uploaded, it instantly became incredibly popular. Unami thought it might even be more popular than the video Konami made alone. Sugimi was completely overwhelmed by the amazing video, but when Utaka wanted to see it, Tsumiki said he didn't need to. Anyway, the dance video has become a hot topic and is attracting a lot of attention. However, Tsumiki announced that it was lunchtime, and that's when she felt most excited about the day. Tsumiki wanted to go to the food stalls with Utaka because she'd heard about the fried hamburgers. But when Utaka said he'd already bought lunch, she said she'd buy lunch herself, and they could eat together. Meanwhile, Utaka's phone rang, and he bent down to answer it. He smiled cheerfully as he replied that he had been busy with the sports festival, and that he would come if he could. Meanwhile, Sanga, the vampire passing by, saw Utaka smile and sigh. When the call ended, Sanga called Utaka strange, noticing his inexplicable personality change. The Keiki High Sports Festival was entering its second half, and while everyone else was having lunch, a very strange Utaka was behaving, but only Sanga witnessed it. Utaka politely asked Sanga to forget what he had seen, and Sanga gave a thumbs up and mimicked Utaka's smile, saying that he had completely forgotten, and everything had been forgotten. Utaka thought that now he would be able to speak more freely, but in just a moment, everything returned to normal. Sanga sat down beside Utaka irritably and said that he could finally eat politely, so Utaka should stop being so gloomy and unpleasant. Sanga then took a bag of blood from the box and gave it to Utaka, much to his surprise. Sanga told him that his bag of blood had arrived today. Although blood donation is crucial for medical treatment, nowadays if you register you can receive a genjin subsidy, but these are not many. And because Sanga has these temptations, his applications were often rejected, all because they assumed he had no problem receiving blood. Therefore, this is the only precious bag of blood he received thanks to his application. Utaka understands that this bag of blood is extremely valuable. But Sanga told him not to have that pitying look, because only Utaka understood his own problems. Just as Sanga understood the difficulties of being in his shoes. To be able to eat enough, he always had to pretend to be an idol because the amount of blood a person can give is limited. So he decided to be everyone's idol. He told Utaka that he played that role just now because there was a little benefit in it. So if he did it out of necessity, then don't sigh about it. At least that's how Sanga thought. Everyone gets along based on benefits and losses. Sanga then wondered if there was any benefit in Utaka playing along with him, especially since he had previously drunk Tsumiki's blood. He assumed Utaka would surely harbor some kind of hatred, even though he no longer drank her blood, but clearly Tsumiki was special to Utaka. To Sanga, it was just a meal, but Utaka was a human, so he was definitely planning something. Sanga thought Utaka was thick-skinned enough to befriend him, but he suspected it was all just a charade. Then, Sanga stood up and left without saying anything more. Utaka also returned to the field to find Konami, who was very excited and ordered her teammates to change the tug-of-war formation, which was the next event. However, Konami said they would win in a flash when practicing, so she wanted to challenge them further. However, her team said they were short one person, as Sanga didn't seem likely to show up, and even if he did, he wouldn't try. Ironically, Sanga heard all this and thought it wasn't good at all. He only had one chance, but even thinking about going out, even if he stayed behind, he would still be within the range of his temptation, and it would take too much time, so he decided to leave. However, Tsumiki spotted him and asked if he was joining in, since he was already on the field. Sanga told her he wouldn't be joining in and asked her not to get too close to him, as it would upset Utaka. Tsumiki says that Utaka is a good guy, but Sanga says that many people who look kind and harmless turn out to be psychopaths. Tsumiki uses her superhuman hearing when Sanga says that, and she hears Utaka currently talking to his class, who knows what he's planning. Tsumiki told Sanga that Utaka had said Sanga would be coming. Sanga thought for a moment and said it was a little strange why he would suddenly speak up like that against the opposing team. Tsumiki felt offended and told Sanga that she could trust Utaka. Now it's time for the tug-of-war competition. So far, the yellow team is in the lead. Another fierce battle is coming this afternoon. It was a 3-team tug-of-war competition among all the freshmen. The team that managed to pull the hoop out of the designated area would win. When the count reached 2, the competition began. All 3 participating teams tried their best. Kinami was excited to learn that Sanga was also participating in the game. Sugimi was shocked that they could balance the power levels to this extent. When they first enrolled, everyone had to have their physical strength measured, and the school used these parameters to divide them into classes. She admitted that Keiki High was amazing because they had balanced everything so perfectly. Unami found it amusing to have such a helpful explanation in a tense moment. Both Tsumiki and Utaka noticed that Sanga had joined the game and recalled the time when they were searching for Mire's glasses. And Sanga had come to their aid. Although he said he couldn't and didn't want to help, he persistently searched the bushes for the glasses. On the other hand, Sanga really didn't want to participate in tug-of-war, especially at such a large event with so many people, and it would also be very physically challenging for him. But he also wondered why Utaka wouldn't give up on him, even though it was clear that Utaka had nothing to gain from trying to establish himself. He gradually realized that this wasn't simply a matter of gain or loss. Therefore, Sanga put all his strength into pulling the rope, causing the other teams to be pulled towards him as well. Thanks to this, the yellow team won, taking another step towards the championship. Unami, meanwhile, was fed up with this sporting event. Konami was confident that her team would win. But the yellow team was too strong now, especially after Sanga joined. However, the star of the game was feeling terrible. With his weakened physical condition and low blood volume, he knew he would suffer short-term memory loss. His hands were even cracked, and he was finally experiencing the harsh realities of tug-of-war. To his surprise, both Tsumiki and Utaka approached him, offering their arms. Utaka asked if he could drink blood from a dune, while Tsumiki said she wouldn't mind if he wanted to drink blood from her arm. Utaka reminded Tsumiki that she still had many competitions to participate in, but so did he. Both displayed extremely determined expressions, as if to say, "Choose me." However, Sanga refused. He had decided not to drink the blood of his friends or those important to them. The two of them completely failed to understand what he was saying, causing Sanga to exclaim that they were incredibly foolish. Keiki High School's sports festival is nearing its end, with only a few events remaining, so the teachers are encouraging everyone to give their best until the very last minute. The yellow team is currently leading by a large margin, so the final relay race suddenly becomes incredibly important, and the blue team must score a high number of points in this part to have any hope of turning the situation around. The blue team is enthusiastically cheering on their relay team, but they are missing a crucial member, Tsumiki. In reality, she was practicing mentally with immense enthusiasm. In her imagination, she was sprinting and crossing the finish line, even achieving a resounding victory. She was more enthusiastic than usual because she wanted to win this festival. This is for the green team from the first year of Class 1. This is their only chance, so I really hope the green team wins this time. The whole team hugged each other to boost their morale. Then, a group of male students appeared, complaining as they walked that genjin were everywhere, causing chaos. One of them recognized the famous werewolf girl from the viral video and immediately wanted to take a picture of her. A boy in black suddenly recognized Utaka. Utaka immediately greeted him with a flustered and slightly panicked expression. Utaka hastily pushed the group away from Tsumiki, while the boy in black told his friends that Utaka used to be a neighborhood acquaintance, having gone to the same school as him. He said that Utaka was always super energetic, but he had never seen Utaka participate in the neighborhood community chat group before. He seemed surprised to learn that Utaka had enrolled at Keiki High School, and asked if he really liked genjin. Utaka immediately shouted, interrupting the question. This prompted his friend to remind him that he was being too noisy. However, when his friend continued to ask about genjin, Utaka loudly interrupted again and quickly justified that he was on a journey of self-discovery. It was a very difficult feeling to describe, like now is the time, that suddenly came over him. Utaka said that he wanted to change himself and happened to see a flyer from Keiki High School, and it felt really good, but at the time I could only force a smile and couldn't tell anyone. Utaka's explanation seemed to have worked, as the boy in black asked if he was participating in the relay race. Then she told Utaka to do his best to make them laugh. Utaka thought to himself that everything would end up the same as always, while Tsumiki was watching him intently with a curious gaze. The next round was the event everyone was looking forward to, the borrowing race. Obstacles had been placed in front of the finish line, so contestants had to choose wisely which item to borrow in order to win. They must ensure that the borrowed item is appropriate for the given theme, as there will be a checkpoint to verify the item. The first runner of the green team is ready. Meanwhile, the audience excitedly discussed the rumor that if you were chosen as an item in the borrow race competition at Keiki, there was a high chance that the couple would become lovers. The male students saw this as an opportunity to start dating Tsumiki, so everyone hoped to be chosen. One boy loudly told Tsumiki that if she had to choose a rude guy as the topic, she should choose him, while the others quietly hoped the topic would relate to their species. Utaka sat alone in the back, lost in thought, wishing he could honestly confide in someone. Just then, Tsumiki approached, nimbly lifted him onto his shoulder, and announced that he was borrowed. The other male students were extremely angry at this blatant favoritism, questioning whether Utaka was truly suitable for the topic he needed to borrow, as that was the most important thing. Tsumiki immediately held up the paper with the topic written on it at the examination station, and the teacher confirmed it, even appearing quite excited. The male students could clearly see the "oh my god, youth" expression on the teacher's face. However, the audience was left confused, wondering why Tsumiki was carrying Utaka like that. According to the rules she'd heard earlier, participants had to bring the item to the finish line, so Tsumiki simply did as she was told. Tsumiki was a very straightforward person, so everyone could only hope that Utaka would be all right. After the yellow team, Tsumiki's blue team finished second. Tsumiki told Utaka that those who had finished their part of the competition should sit down and rest. But Utaka didn't look well at the moment. She gave him the piece of paper with the topic written on it. However, Utaka still couldn't understand why she chose him. Tsumiki explained that Utaka's childhood friend had come here before to spend time with him. She remembered that, but she thought she wouldn't be able to do the same, because she has so many habits and characteristics that make it difficult for her to fit in. If she starts to suppress herself, there will never be an end to it. However, for Utaka, even when hurt, he always tries his best to ensure that no one else has to feel bad. In that way, he's living the best life he can, and that's why he's exactly like the theme of the game. She's a wonderful person. Utaka was touched and thanked her for choosing him. The results of the borrowing contest were also announced. The yellow team came first, the blue team second, and the red team third, so the yellow team retained their lead. Everyone was asked to hand in their topic papers, but Utaka asked permission to keep his. When he was accepted, he thanked the teacher. Looking back since meeting Tsumiki, everything has been like a whirlwind, leaving him no time to wallow in heavy thoughts. She has helped him a great deal. Tsumiki wanted the blue team to win, so when the guy in black approached Utaka to remind him not to embarrass him, Utaka calmly replied that they would win. The final event of the relay race began dramatically, and the contestants started running. The audience was eager to finally witness a race between boys and girls, between the genjin and human races, in a dramatic competition where only the speed of their legs mattered. The freshman relay race provided enough points to narrow the score gap. If the blue team didn't win this race, they wouldn't secure the overall victory. The team's first group of runners were incredibly strong, with Tsumiki, the super competitive Kanami, and Unami, the fastest runner among the freshmen. They needed to create as large a lead as possible before the last athletes came along. Utaka looked very focused and serious as he recalled the first time he met the boy in black, Atsudu. At that time, Utaka's family had just moved to the neighborhood, and he was in the same class as Atsudu. When the whole class bothered Utaka with too many personal questions, it was Atsudu who told them to be quiet. Before long, Utaka began to admire Atsudu for his straightforwardness. He even told his mother that Atsudu always speaks his mind. At that time, Utaka's mother said that Atsudu's family was going through a difficult time, so they should be there to help him when needed. Utaka didn't quite understand, but he still agreed. Atsudu has excellent reflexes, runs very fast, and trains every day. Utaka asked if he really enjoyed running, since he practiced every day. Atsudu replied that it was because when he ran, he didn't have to think about anything. Gradually, things changed. Atsudu left the track and field club, and when his friends asked if his family agreed with this decision, Utaka interrupted speaking loudly, which prompted Atsudu to scold him for being too noisy. Utaka didn't know what to do. All he could do was try to prevent things from getting worse. He wanted to consult his mother, but she was busy with his younger sister, so he decided to ask his teacher for help instead. The teacher said he would keep an eye on the situation, but when Utaka asked him what he should do, the teacher replied that he should just keep doing what he was doing. Because even though they were completely different, they were very good friends. Utaka didn't understand this. How could things possibly continue like this indefinitely? Finally, when he was filling out the career survey form, he didn't know what to write. But as soon as Utaka bitterly said that it was easy, because Utaka must surely have a dream or something he wanted to do, Atsudu said that he was lucky, so don't pretend you have nothing. Utaka hated this, hated himself, but he couldn't forget them. The memories of the happy times with Atsudu, the person he admired still remains. He doesn't want to pretend those things never happened. Atsudu could see a glimpse of the past when he watched Utaka running in the relay, and he found it quite annoying. In the far corner, there were blue, red, and then yellow. And at this moment, Tsumiki was extremely excited, with everyone cheering for Utaka. However, unexpectedly, all the participants on the racetrack fell down, much to everyone's surprise. In fact, the track was frozen over by snowmen sitting nearby. This water came from Kane's power bath. Utaka has a sore leg, but there's still a long way to go to Tsumiki, and if he can't move, the team won't be able to win. Tsumiki called out to him and asked if he could move. Utaka tried to move and pass the baton to her. With the baton passed, the blue team took the lead, and the red team caught up. The yellow team was the last to pass the baton, but Unami wasn't worried, knowing for sure that there was no way she could lose. Therefore, the yellow team quickly caught up, with Unami performing a Naruto-style run. The atmosphere heated up as the three teams drew closer together. But at the finish line, Unami pierced herself with the golden wire. But her torso was the deciding factor, so there will be a reassessment via video. Finally, the blue team won, thanks to the efforts of the freshmen, bringing them closer to the overall victory. Next up was the relay race with the second-year students. Utaka saw Atsudo, who said it had been a long time since he'd last seen Utaka. With a genuine smile on his face, Atsudo said that Utaka had really changed since entering Keiki High School. Utaka agreed because there was someone there who would allow him to be a naughty child. Tsumiki smiled contentedly as she looked at her trophy. Keiki School's sports festival has concluded with 3 teams, the blue, red, and yellow teams, engaging in thrilling matches. However, in the latter half of the event, the blue team caught up and secured the overall victory, and the next event was the midterm exam. Tsumiki was exhausted after finishing the first day of exams because the sports festival ended too quickly. She didn't go home right away, but still had to study. She asked about tomorrow's exam, and when told the first subject was math, she immediately stood up and ran off, before thanking them for informing her. Things weren't great because math was her worst subject. She wondered where she should study, as there were too many games at home and too many people talking in class. She kept pacing back and forth in front of the class, so Utaka asked her if something was wrong, and she asked about the study location he had suggested. Tsumiki told Utaka that she always got poor grades in high school and frequently ranked very low, but if she failed this exam, she might have to repeat the year, which she really didn't want. Utaka told her about a library in his area and asked if she'd like to go with him. She asked if that was okay, and Utaka replied that as long as she felt comfortable, they could study together. He said he liked math and could help her. Tsumiki was delighted to hear this, but then became saddened that Utaka liked math, as if it were strange. Tsumiki was surprised and asked where he usually studied, to which Utaka replied that he studied in the seat at the back of the room. Tsumiki also agreed that sitting at the edge of the room was a good idea, as they could relax. Upon seeing the sign requesting silence, Tsumiki started to fall silent and even used gestures. Utaka realized why she was acting that way and told her that it was okay if they spoke quietly. Tsumiki made a face like a goldfish, and Utaka asked her to repeat it. She moved closer and whispered to him, "How much silence is enough silence?" Utaka was surprised and finally realized that Tsumiki's hearing was very sensitive, making silence completely different for her. He simply explained to her that this was enough, and Tsumiki finally understood. Utaka noticed that at times she seemed very shy, and sometimes she would get very close to him, leaving him feeling uncertain but unable to relax. Meanwhile, Tsumiki asked about a middle school review exercise concerning water flowing into a partitioned tank at a constant speed. But she couldn't understand why there was a divider right inside. She even doubted the drawing. But she didn't stop there. She also wondered about point P, asking where point P came from and why it wanted to move now. She was strangely fascinated by that point P. Utaka said that he was curious too, but they needed to learn what was necessary for tomorrow first, and then they could talk about the P point later. Finally, Tsumiki tried to solve the assignment, and with a little help from Utaka, she thought she just needed to try it. Utaka recalled that she was quite embarrassed when her nails grew long, so he wondered when she had started keeping them neatly trimmed. Because now she looked quite striking. Tsumiki noticed Utaka was daydreaming, so he quickly apologized and offered some suggestions for solving the assignment. She told him not to worry about her, to study whatever he wanted, and when he was finished, he could look over her work. So they started studying, but how could he possibly concentrate? The exams continued, and a week later, the teacher announced that he would return the math test papers. The teacher also said that the average score this time was 67 points. When Tsumiki looked at her score, she just stared at it, while Utaka hesitantly asked her how she did on the test. She gently showed him her score, 41 points. Utaka encouraged her, assuring her that she hadn't failed. But Tsumiki said it was amazing because it was the first time she had gotten such a high score. If she continued to study hard, getting a perfect score of 100 wouldn't be impossible. She told Utaka that he was so good at teaching, so she bet he would get a perfect score. Utaka hid his score and said he got the usual. Tsumiki thought that would be fine, but she didn't know that Utaka had actually scored 70 points. The events of the first half of the first semester concluded in June. The relationships between classmates had become closer. Utaka was greeted by his classmates. The invisible man asked him what he thought of his new summer shirt, while only one person advised him to be upfront about complimenting him, as the man would continue to pester him until he did. The invisible man felt hurt by this remark, and to show his sad face, he asked for a pen and paper. He drew a face on the paper to show his current emotions, but his friends couldn't help but laugh. Gradually, Utaka made more friends to talk to, and this made him happy. The class was greeted by Tsumiki in her summer uniform. Even the only boy admitted that she was cuter than he thought. Unbelievably cute. Tsumiki greeted the girls and asked Mire if she could do it. Mire really had no other choice, so she started grooming Tsumiki's ear hair. Tsumiki always felt good doing that. Mire asked if there was any difference, and Tsumiki replied that it was much better when someone you like does it for you. Oni slammed his head on the table because only the closest friends had that privilege, and he wondered how he could possibly reach that level. The invisible man pointed out that Oni was even having trouble talking to her, but Oni told him to shut up because he was feeling pain right there. Time passed with their normal daily routines, and Utaka realized that they hadn't really talked to each other lately. But there's a reason for that, because all the interesting things have happened, and that's why they have a chance to chat. But those are just exceptional cases. It's fun for the moment. But Utaka guessed that this was exactly how their daily lives unfolded. Utaka found Tsumiki in the gym and was about to leave, but Tsumiki recognized him. She asked him if he was coming in, and he quickly gave a reason why he was there. Utaka wondered how he had spoken to her before and asked what she was doing there. Tsumiki replied that she was on the sports committee and was counting the sports equipment. Tsumiki noticed Utaka seemed strange, so she grabbed him and asked why he was avoiding her at this time. Utaka didn't want to talk to her. He didn't need to pretend. Utaka said that over the past few weeks he had thought a lot about how comfortable he felt being around her, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he and Tsumiki lived in two completely different worlds. Tsumiki became confused and said that Utaka was very important to her, and there was no way that could change. Utaka was surprised, then Tsumiki apologized and asked him to hold out his hand so she could place the toothbrush in it. Then she lost her temper and took off her shoes. She sat with her back to Utaka, saying that she had been a little angry, so now she felt itchy and asked him to comb her hair. Utaka opened the toothbrush, grabbed her tail, and began brushing. He also apologized to Tsumiki. He said that he had actually wanted to talk to her for a long time. Tsumiki awkwardly admitted it, but then they heard the bell signaling the start of class, and hurried back to class. They arrived on time, but they still got scolded for running in the hallway. The boys wondered why they were running like that, worried since they hadn't seen the two of them together recently. However, they were surprised to see fur on Utaka's uniform. It was only then that Utaka noticed, but the whole class had been paying attention for a while already. The teacher asked the class to start studying, but everyone said they couldn't concentrate on the lesson anymore. The wave of events in the first half of the first semester has ended. Summer vacation is approaching, and when that time comes, this is also when declarations of love and dating requests begin to appear. It was as if the number of confessions had skyrocketed. Thank you, Unami. She rejected the boy who had just bravely confessed. Even her classmates kept track of the numbers, and as far as they knew, this was the 10th guy. They all had a pretty good relationship with Unami, but they wondered why she had never accepted anyone. One guy, still not giving up, asked Unami why she'd told him she liked him so many times. She admitted that she liked him a lot, just as she'd said. She even wanted to invite him to a movie tomorrow, and he even had tickets to a film festival exclusively for couples. The boy couldn't understand how this worked when she was still rejecting him. Unami said that the ticket stated any male-female couple was acceptable, so it was fine. But the guy said that if she didn't have romantic feelings for someone, she couldn't easily say she liked them, as it would cause misunderstandings. Unami stuck her horns into a tree because she completely misunderstood the situation. She saw nothing wrong with telling people she liked them, and didn't understand why there had to be a misunderstanding. She felt sorry for herself because she liked everyone and really wanted to see that movie. Utaka found her moaning, and she threatened to stab him for looking. Utaka apologized and tried to warn her about the tree, but Unami told him that they wanted the trees cut down, so it was okay, since she was allowed to use her horn. Utaka tried to warn her again, but the tree suddenly broke, and luckily Tsumiki arrived in time and held it back. Unami apologized for being distracted and thanked them, but she paused before telling them she loved them, as she couldn't say it so casually anymore. Tsumiki picked up the movie tickets from the ground, and Unami told her they were for tomorrow. Her plans had been cancelled, so she decided to give them to Tsumiki. Utaka wondered if Tsumiki intended to keep the tree as if nothing had happened while they talked. Tsumiki, however, said she could go with Unami. Unami really wanted to go with her, but the tickets were only for male-female couples. Tsumiki said they could go together all the way. So the two girls went to the movie theater, and it was Tsumiki's first time. Unami told her that this movie theater catered especially to people with unique personalities like genjin, so she strongly encouraged Tsumiki to come here. Tsumiki asked what kind of movie they would be watching, and Unami said it was a romantic film, and that a friend of hers would be appearing in it, so she thought she would send him a review. Utaka also arrived and noticed that they were attracting too much attention. Although there were quite a few genjin at Keiki High School, they were less common in society at large. Unami is quite popular on her social media, and Tsumiki has appeared in a viral dance video with Konami. Utaka wonders if everything is okay and worries whether they'll be able to watch the movie peacefully. However, Tsumiki managed to sort everything out. She told everyone to line up if they also wanted to buy food, and led the crowd, instructing them to order like this. Unami also joined in and told everyone that if they took pictures, without permission, she would stab them. These two are really strong. The movie was about to start, so the two girls put on sunglasses and earplugs, provided by the cinema, like Batman's vision. Tsumiki explained that she read online that it might be too bright at first, so she brought these things along, but they weren't actually necessary, so they removed them. Utaka found the movie a bit drawn out, but that's just how romantic movies are. However, he really wished they could have gotten straight to the story without taking up so much time. He glanced at Tsumiki and saw that she was blushing. Unami watched the movie very calmly, but when the characters in the film talked about love, and those are the words they only say to their lovers, Unami tightened her grip on the straw. After the movie ended, she thanked the two of them for coming to see it with her, and Tsumiki did the same, because the movie was really enjoyable. Utaka also said that he found the ending of the movie very touching. Unami said that she would tell her friend about this. But then she realized that she really shouldn't have said that. She thought that the word love is a word used for people you truly love, and if you use it too easily, you might hurt others. But she truly loved everyone, and she doesn't understand romantic love at all. Unami says she's decided to leave, but Tsumiki stops her. Tsumiki doesn't really understand what Unami is saying, but she thinks it's better to let everyone know. Friends and loved ones are very important people, so she thought it best to speak up. Unami was encouraged and told that she truly loved both Tsumiki and Utaka, and so Unami's habit of telling everyone that she liked them continued, and it is said that the number of students who had been drowned in the swamp increased. It's now the end of July, so Tsumiki told the group to start a big cleanup, but the question was why she went barefoot. The answer was simple, because it felt pleasant and comfortable. They wondered why she was so happy about it. And Tsumiki said that for people with wolf blood like her, getting dirty was actually fun. They really had to do this because there was even an indoor swimming pool, although it was rarely used. Today is the last day of the first semester, so Utaka needs to ask his classmates before they finish cleaning up. He won't be able to see everyone again during the summer holidays. He gradually got to know and understand people better, but just when he thought they could become true friends, the long summer vacation arrived. It was an assault of 40 empty days, and when the second semester began, Utaka was completely confident in his ability to be forgotten. He didn't know what to say. Was there anything everyone wanted to do in common? With their different personalities and natures, like each person had their own preferences, and each had their own dislikes. He truly didn't know enough about them. At the Hebazono store, she told her regular customers that she wanted to introduce them to pool cleaning products, including a powerful stain-removing soap with a sponge, and if they acted immediately, she would even give them a brush for free. Everyone unanimously said the price was too high. Mire assigned tasks. Kura would use a sponge to clean the pool walls, Kurohane would use a broom to sweep the roof of the changing room, and finally, Tsumiki and Matsuiki, being quite strong, would clean up the most stubborn stains. Matsuiki was thrilled not only to be working in the same area but also doing the same job. This was a great opportunity for him to get closer to Tsumiki. They started working, but Matsuiki couldn't talk to Tsumiki. However, he felt pleased because Tsumiki was really cute when she was serious. Meanwhile, Utaka and Kitu were tasked with spraying water where necessary. Utaka thought he should focus on cleaning first. Tsumiki asked him for the spray nozzle, and he said she was turning green. He asked if she needed him to take care of her, because it might not be good for her skin. She closed her eyes and leaned her face towards him. A sudden thought struck Utaka. He used a tissue to wipe her face, but she took his hand and said the spray nozzle was fine. Utaka was horrified to realize he hadn't needed a handkerchief at all. Matsuki felt jealous of their spontaneous flirting and told them to get back to work. Mire looked up at the sky and said the weather was beautiful. The group saw an opportunity to ask if they could go home yet, but Mire zipped up her raincoat, and the whole group started using water hoses to spray water everywhere. Utaka sat beside them, dejected that their work was finished. Tsumiki noticed something was amiss and asked Utaka about it. Utaka admitted that he wanted to ask everyone something, but he didn't know what to say because he didn't understand them well enough. Tsumiki advised him that if he wanted to understand people better, he just needed to ask. Utaka realized that since he didn't know much about them, he wanted to learn more about them. So he decided to say that he wanted to spend the summer vacation with the whole group. Although he was sure everyone had their own plans, if they couldn't, they could tell him, and he would understand and make arrangements accordingly. But if they wanted to get together, they could inform him, and he would be very happy. He realized he had talked too much because he was so nervous. But the whole group said they absolutely wanted to hang out together, even creating a group chat and deciding to name it the Pool Cleaners. Tsumiki told Utaka that their summer vacation would be a lot of fun. Utaka also agreed that this summer vacation would be wonderful. Utaka returned home and his younger sister glanced at him, saying he looked very happy. His phone rang, the sound signaling that they were planning their summer. This is the first time since he entered Keiki school. His summer began with jobs like sea inspection and shop inspection. And with that, the Konami beach shop opened. She was very excited and looked forward to similar things from Tsumiki and Utaka. Tsumiki had no idea that Konami's home was a seaside resort, so Konami explained that her father wanted people to love the sea more, which is why they held this event every year. She asked if they had signed up to work there because of their love for the sea. Utaka admitted that he came here on the advice of his older sister, but he paused, saying that Tsumiki had bought so many things when the summer vacation started that she was now out of money. Konami reminded her that only a week had passed. Anyway, since they've arrived at the beach, they'll get to experience the best things. Konami welcomes them to her workplace full of stings. Tsumiki and Utaka don't know exactly what stings are. But Utaka was surprised because both Tsumiki and Konami were experts in customer service. Konami's father was impressed with the wolf girl, but he was certain she couldn't compare to his Konami. Konami possessed incredible strength and agility from a young age, and he was surprised that she could stand up and walk immediately. Utaka was also impressed by how quickly she grew. Konami's father said that's why he'd never seen her rely on anyone else. Both Tsumiki and Konami froze, then immediately poured water from the bucket over their heads. Konami nearly fainted because she's a mermaid-type genjin, and her powers change depending on the presence of water. Tsumiki is a wolf-type genjin, so she's also very sensitive to temperature. Utaka asked the shop owner if it was okay inside the shop, but the owner said there was no problem, which was understandable since they had already warned customers that they might get splashed with seawater. All customers are looking at one special person, the famous streamer and master of customer complaints, Mr. YPay. Today, he's here to check on customer service again, live streaming. Genjin stores usually attract a lot of viewers, and today it's the store where Konami, who has so many viral videos, is working. Therefore, he saw a great money-making opportunity and planned to take full advantage of gullible people. Utaka had seen this person before, and he told others that Mr. YPay created content about terrible customer service. He placed ridiculously annoying orders, but executed them so brilliantly that it drove stores away. Utaka asked what they would do with Streamer, since their shop's slogan was to make people laugh and help them love the sea more. And he was a customer too. Konami said she would handle him, so they both continued with their work. Konami approached Mr. YPay and asked if he had decided on the dishes. The man nodded and presented a very long order. Konami jotted everything down, determined to protect her father's shop. She could do everything on her own, but when she returned, the customers had left. Konami was astonished, and immediately Tsumiki poured a bucket of water over her head, telling her that now was the time for the injection. Even Mr. YPay got soaked, but Utaka came to his rescue in time, apologizing and fixing his hair. The man was impressed that he could fix his hair instantly, whereas every morning it took him an hour to get his hair done. Even the wild wolf girl has excellent customer service, and the speed at which the food is served is impeccable. Most importantly, to serve a media personality and streamer like this, with such a bright smile, but what about the taste? He tried a piece and was clearly very impressed. Tsumiki and Konami celebrated by clapping in victory. Konami's father shed tears of happiness and thanked them. He was very happy that his daughter had such intelligent friends. It was wonderful. He gave them a salary and invited them to join Konami because there was a place she always went to. The two found Konami in a wonderful place. She told them that whenever something good happened, she came here. Being near the sea was the best thing ever, but she also thanked them because today was the best day ever. Back at the wolf house, the eldest daughter, Tsumiki, is playing watermelon slicing with her siblings. However, her second daughter, Itsuki, told her that there was no watermelon. It seems she'd forgotten the most important thing. So, she decided to go buy one, but the children stopped her. They asked her how she could forget about watermelon, but didn't want her to go because they knew she'd be distracted. Itsuki couldn't stand it anymore and decided to go buy watermelon. However, her younger sibling stood still because she hated going outside. Itsuki reminded Tsumiki that she had promised to play with everyone today, and that she had been away most of the time since the summer holidays began, leaving the children feeling lonely. Tsumiki asked if she could bring everything back. Watermelon, some snacks, Ramoon, and fireworks for everyone. Itsuki simply said she had already gone out, deciding not to bring anything. In the outside world, Itsuki begins his journey and continues sniffing his way along the path. The outside world was terrible, so she thought she shouldn't go out. She wondered why Tsumiki always seemed so happy when she went out. She didn't even know the way and had to rely on a map, but the map is gone now. Fortunately, Utaka found her note and the two recognized each other. Tsumiki thanked him and continued on her way, but she didn't know where to go. Utaka told her that he was also on his way to the supermarket and asked if she wanted to come along. The watermelons were all gone, so Itsuki had to find another store. She received a message from Tsumiki, who told her that if she encountered any difficulties, she should let her handle it. Itsuki left the shop, but Utaka was the one who showed her the way home, asking if she didn't often come there. She replied that she didn't often come because she hated the outside world. It was too noisy, there were too many smells she couldn't distinguish, and the summer was too hot. Despite the harsh realities of the outside world, Tsumiki always looks cheerful whenever she goes out. But today, they have Tsumiki at home with them, and she said everyone should share the watermelon because it would be fun. That's why she had to buy the watermelon today, and she wants to do the best she can. However, she breathed a sigh of relief when she received a message from Tsumiki. She thought it was a terrible place, but Utaka thought she could learn to like it. Itsuki recalled when Tsumiki had shown her the beauty of the outside world and said that she would surely learn to love it. And now Itsuki could finally see that beautiful world. She asked, "What was that sound?" Utaka told her that it was the sound of summer. They found some watermelons and Itsuki was able to buy 4. Even the vendor said that summer is the time to eat watermelon and wished her a happy summer. She thanked him, but then realized that Utaka was smiling because she looked like Tsumiki back then, and he really felt they were sisters. However, Itsuki said that they are not alike, because Tsumiki is actually amazing, and she is very proud of her. Itsuki returned to the cave but was immediately surrounded by her younger siblings, who began sniffing her all over as if conducting a full body inspection. Tsumiki asked if anything was wrong, but Itsuki told her that nothing was too bad. Tsugimi was worried because they had only gone out to look for ladybugs, but had instead wandered into a world full of ghosts. Tsumiki was certain that if ghosts appeared, she would defeat them with her fists. Utaka worried about the poor ghost, thinking it would regret its actions even more in this world. But Sanga wondered why Utaka cared so much about a ghost. Tsugimi said that this place was too dangerous and suggested that everyone find the gift for Tsumiki's younger brother somewhere else. She told everyone to stay close together so they wouldn't get separated. But Tsumiki and Utaka have disappeared. Tsugimi felt certain something was wrong as they had just been standing close together a moment ago. With Tsumiki's keen hearing, she could definitely hear everyone calling her name. But Tsugimi's mind was preoccupied with another dimension, and she didn't want to live in a world without Tsumiki. Sanga told Tsugimi not to worry herself sick, because the other two would surely be fine. He suggested they quickly descend the mountain because there was absolutely no phone signal here. Tsugimi wondered why things had turned out this way. She remembered that Tsumiki herself had asked for her help, and of course she had readily agreed. But now there was no signal, and the only person she could rely on this haunted mountain was Sanga. Initially, she was quite excited that he was a vampire, but then she discovered that he was sometimes playful, sometimes dazed, sometimes acting impulsively like Misaka, and now he's become someone to be wary of. Moreover, he's the type who only thinks about benefits and drawbacks, so there's a possibility he might use her as bait for evil spirits. She told herself she had to be careful. Sanga asked her what she was afraid of, since there was nothing scary on this mountain. But as soon as I saw a cross, he immediately screamed and then fell heavily to the ground. Regaining his composure, Sanga decided to continue, but Tsugimi warned him about the path ahead, which was entirely covered in garlic. Sanga had completely given up by now, but Tsugimi still dragged him along, grumbling all the while that his genjin nature gave him many amazing special abilities. Yet for some reason he kept encountering things he was weakest at today. Sanga retorted that it wasn't his fault, and complained that his eyes were burning from the smell of garlic. Tsugimi said that if that were the case, at least he should have walked properly on his own. Finally, they arrived at a tunnel that looked like it was definitely haunted. There was light at the end of the tunnel, but why was it so far away? Sanga reminded her of her seductive power, warning that it would be very dangerous if they got trapped in the tunnel. Tsugimi wasn't worried. She said that if anything happened, she would simply observe it objectively, like a detached observer. Sanga was quite impressed with her level of interest in genjin. He secretly thought he could befriend her, but Tsugimi coldly rejected him immediately. When Tsugimi heard a strange sound, she panicked and asked Sanga if he heard it, then told him to run at full speed to the exit. Sanga seized the opportunity to make a deal. If Tsugimi agreed to be his friend, he would lead her out of the tunnel. Tsugimi angrily asked if he wanted her to throw him straight into that damn garlic field, then yelled at the mischievous Masokis to stop acting so happy. Sanga suggested that if possible, she could tell him more about werewolves, as she seemed to know a great deal about genjin. Tsugimi was immediately displeased upon hearing this, and retorted that he was targeting Tsumiki again. Sanga quickly explained that he wasn't. He only thought it might be helpful for Utaka. Sugimi found it hard to believe why he would do that for Utaka, because she knew Sanga was the type of person who only acted based on self-interest and harm, and wouldn't easily help anyone. But Sanga honestly admitted that he only wanted to repay a favor. Normally, he didn't mind being exposed to the sun too much, but summer was really harsh for him. That's when Utaka approached him proactively, as if everything were perfectly natural. Utaka was the one who suggested Sanga go beetle hunting, because it was a nighttime activity. And he also helped him a lot during the sports competition. So this time, Sanga wants to do something to repay Utaka. They both fell silent instantly upon hearing heavy footsteps approaching them. Sugimi panicked, bursting into tears that the spirit in the tunnel was about to curse and destroy them. While jumping around in fear, she stumbled and fell, but her mouth continued to mutter about her fears. Sanga quickly helped her up and then carried her away at full speed. Upon emerging from the tunnel, he loudly berated Tsumiki for silently rushing towards them at maximum speed, terrifying them to death. Tsumiki calmly asked why they had run away. Utaka was out of breath, unable to keep up. Tsumiki explained that she didn't dare shout in the tunnel for fear of scaring them even more. Utaka recounted that after being separated, they discovered a lot of ranga beetles, and Tsumiki caught quite a few for her younger brother. Upon hearing the conversation, they quickly chased after them to rejoin the group. Sugimi thanked Sanga for helping her at that time and secretly thought that perhaps he wasn't just calculating for his own benefit. At least based on the information she currently has about his character, she feels like she knows everything about Sanga, but in reality, she knows nothing about him as an individual. So she told Sanga that if there was anything she could do to help, he should just say so. She wasn't sure what she could do, but since he had carried her out of the tunnel, she was willing to compromise. Sanga excitedly asked if they could be friends now, but was rejected once again. Meanwhile, Utaka realized he had arrived too early. The group had decided that their summer activity this year would be attending a festival together. It had been quite a while since he'd last seen everyone, although he occasionally encountered Tsumiki. When Tsumiki appeared, Utaka was stunned into silence. She smiled as usual, saying that they were the first to arrive. Tsumiki also complimented Utaka's yukata, saying it was beautiful, but she struggled to combine the words yukata and Utaka into a single sentence. Utaka also wanted to compliment her, and had even prepared the words in his head, but what came out were jumbled sounds that didn't form a coherent sentence. Tsumiki turned around cheerfully and said that this was nothing unusual, because she was so excited for the festival that she had asked Itsuki to help her put on the yukata. Utaka wished he could respond normally, but as always, he was overly cautious. Soon after, the rest of the group arrived. Mire and Tsumiki were very excited about the fireworks display, so they eagerly searched for the best spot to watch them. Utaka noticed that Tsumiki was carefully drawing another map by hand. The others felt more at ease knowing they had two guides, so the whole group decided to go sightseeing at the fair stalls. Tsumiki wanted to buy a really big candy apple, but her kind friend reminded her that since it was her first time at a festival, she should know that big candy apples are difficult to eat. However, Tsumiki's powerful bite on the apple caused immediate damage. Mire chose strawberries and immediately radiated cuteness. Afterward, the group tried the game of scooping up fish, but only Katu and Utaka were really good at it. Tsumiki also wanted to try it and asked Utaka for a little tip. Utaka was showing off his skills, but at that moment his paper tore, making him blush with embarrassment. Tsumiki laughed teasingly because he tore the paper, while Utaka claimed it was all because she was staring at him so intently that he became flustered. Kitu told Matsuiki to be quiet, even though he didn't actually say anything, clearly showing his jealousy. The group then sat down to eat and drink, while Tsumiki and Utaka went to buy some drinks. Tsumiki said that the atmosphere today reminded her of the time when the whole group worked part-time at Konami Cafe. Amidst the bustling atmosphere of preparing to watch the fireworks, Tsumiki suddenly told Utaka to wait a moment because she was starting to feel a little nervous. Utaka asked if this was her first time seeing fireworks, and Tsumiki nodded, saying it was her first time seeing them live. Before, she had only heard the sound of fireworks. When she was a child, she once heard a strange popping sound, and when she asked her mother, she learned it was fireworks. When she heard her mother explain that those were flowers blooming in the sky, she was so moved that she burst into tears. It wasn't until she entered high school that she had the opportunity to travel more. And today, they have a beautiful view, everything they need, and they even get to watch fireworks with their friends. This made her feel very excited. She also carefully brought along earplugs, the super soundproof kind, because the fireworks were very loud. Utaka also admitted that sometimes even he was startled by the explosions. Tsumiki was surprised to learn that fireworks could startle people, so she became even more determined to use earplugs. However, while she was holding them, some mischievous children pushed her, causing the earplugs to fall out of her hand. Utaka remembered Tsumiki's eagerness and, without hesitation, immediately jumped into the water to retrieve it for her. Meanwhile, at his group of friends, Matsuiki sensed something ominous. When asked if he had psychic abilities, Matsuiki replied that it wasn't one of his genjin abilities. He found it strange that Tsumiki and Utaka had been gone for so long without returning. They didn't even text or call. The whole group was worried, wondering what had happened, but they reassured themselves that since it was Tsumiki, everything would be fine. However, this only made Matsuki more worried, because if it was those two, it was hard to predict what might happen. He just hoped they hadn't caused any major trouble. Elsewhere, Utaka was holding Tsumiki, wondering why things had turned out this way. At the foot of the bridge during a summer festival night, a mother was bowing her head, profusely apologizing for her children's mischief. However, Utaka quickly explained that he had simply jumped down on his own, while Tsumiki claimed she tripped because she was wearing geta clogs. Both were soaking wet, so the other mother offered to help dry them off immediately with her warm breath, inevitably spreading some bacteria. Utaka thought he had really gotten himself into big trouble this time, because when he was about to fall into the river, Tsumiki tried to save him, but as a result, they both fell into the water. Utaka apologized because Tsumiki had styled her hair beautifully, carefully dressed in her yukata, and prepared everything for today's ceremony. But Tsumiki just laughed and said that he was only trying to save her earplug. She also asked Utaka to help her alter her yukata. They found a secluded spot, and Utaka began helping her adjust her outfit. Tsumiki gently suggested that there was no need to turn away, as she was wearing another shirt underneath. However, Utaka replied that it was much easier to put it on without having to look. Definitely easier. He wondered how Tsumiki could be so nonchalant in this situation. Finally, he decided that he should just pretend he was helping his younger sister change clothes. Utaka realized that he just needed to focus on getting her dressed quickly, so that Tsumiki's first fireworks display would be perfect. So, he hurriedly adjusted her yukata. When everything was settled, Tsumiki thanked him, and they both decided to go back. It was almost 8 p.m., and Utaka was worried they wouldn't make it to the fireworks. He blamed himself for wasting so much time. If only he could have dressed her faster, if only he hadn't fallen into the water in the first place. Tsumiki had been so excited for this evening, but now they might miss it. But Tsumiki quickly brought Utaka back, saying she wanted to watch the fireworks with everyone. She urgently told Utaka to jump onto her back. Utaka didn't quite understand, but he still climbed onto her, Tsumiki saying that they would definitely make it in time. Tsumiki took a deep breath and leaped up, hurtling forward. Up in the sky, Utaka was making too much noise, but Tsumiki told him to open his eyes. The view below amazed Utaka, and he said that the scenery was always wonderful when he was with her. Tsumiki glanced at the moon and couldn't stop howling at it. Her howl rang out and was heard by the whole group, everyone recognizing it as the cutest howl only Tsumiki could make. The two finally turned back and of course were reprimanded for not checking their phones more often. Tsumiki happily sat down and told Utaka to sit next to him. Everyone settled into their seats, and Utaka thought he was acting strangely today. He didn't know exactly what he wanted to say, only that he wanted to thank Tsumiki for helping him earlier. However, Tsumiki said that she was the one who should be thanking him. As the fireworks began to bloom, Utaka remarked on how beautiful they were, and simultaneously realized what he had long wanted to say. Even though she wouldn't be able to hear if he told her now, he felt relieved, and he thought that someday he would tell her. September 1st, the second semester begins today. And now that the semester has begun, Utaka is showing his good character. He brought a bunch of school cleaning cloths and asked everyone if they wanted to exchange them for new ones. One person replied that he couldn't actually use the towel if it wasn't wet. Utaka understood and left, while his friends thanked him, saying that he was always very diligent. However, Utaka felt sad, because he felt he had messed things up again. It had been so long since he'd been to school, it was hard to get back into the swing of things. Recalling the personalities of all the different genjin, he couldn't help but worry. He was afraid he might accidentally say something extremely impolite, so he had to be extremely careful. Utaka greets his friends, but Matsuiki asks if he's changed his face, while Katu wants him to use his other face. Tsumiki hasn't arrived yet. Utaka thinks she'll probably come early for the first day of the new semester, so he was a little worried about what might happen. But then Tsumiki appeared, shoes in hand, and climbed in through the window. Utaka panicked because they were on the 4th floor, but Tsumiki calmly said that since they were running late, it was faster to get in through the window. She was as strong as ever, even though the 2nd semester had already begun. Utaka noticed the dark circles under her eyes and wondered if he should ask. But Tsumiki burst out laughing and jokingly told herself she looked like a panda. She explained that she had stayed up all night doing her summer homework, which was why she was in this state, and even asked Utaka if he wanted to take a picture as a memento. However, Utaka sensed a murderous aura emanating from behind him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. The new semester not only brought new lessons, but also a physical test and a measurement of genjin nature. Tsugimi never thought she would actually be involved in assisting with this measurement, so she was determined to record all the parameters accurately. Utaka claims he's the one holding the official measurement sheet, causing Tsugimi to panic and pull out a bunch of his personal notes. Utaka wonders if they have to remeasure genjin nature every semester, and Tsugimi explains that while changes in genjin nature are rare, they are still possible, so they need to conduct periodic tests. Perhaps Tsumiki's nature had changed, so Tsugimi was eager to record the data, but she couldn't find Tsumiki and began to wonder if he was hiding to take a nap. Werewolves need more sleep than humans, and Tsumiki by nature needed frequent short naps. However, due to his vigilant nature, werewolves rarely actually sleep. Tsugimi apologized and refocused on her measurements. The next student is Tomo Makuri from the 2nd grade. She's an insectoid who can shoot webs like a spider from her mouth. Tsugimi quickly measured the length of the silk thread, while Utaka was impressed and complimented her, saying it looked really cool. However, Makuri argued that those were just threads she was forced to release, and that such an act was not at all graceful for a half-human, half-beast creature. She asked if anyone was genuinely moved by seeing a spider spin a web, then expressed her bewilderment. Afterward, she rolled the silk into a ball and gave it to Utaka, saying that to her it was just rubbish. The measuring work continued, leaving Utaka exhausted, so he sought a quiet place to rest. He told himself that there was still so much about the fundamental differences in their natures that he didn't understand, and he needed to learn more diligently. He also knew that some of them didn't seem to like him, and he didn't want that to happen. These thoughts were actually the monsters within him making him think that way. While out for a walk, Tsumiki found him, but he was preoccupied with why Tsumiki had emerged from underground like a zombie. He asked her where she was going, and she replied that she had just dug a hole and invited him in. Utaka hesitated, but Tsumiki took his hand and told him not to hesitate because that's what she wanted. Utaka took in his surroundings and realized the air was wonderfully cool. Tsumiki told him that she often rested in a cave when she felt tired, and that it was the best place. She also said that he could use it if he wanted. Utaka said that she had worked very hard. Tsumiki replied that she had stayed up all night, that she liked being at school and liked everyone, but that was different from the other. She was tired, so she had to do what needed to be done. A moment of silence passed, and Tsumiki drifted off to sleep. Utaka whispered his thanks and wondered if he could leave without waking her. However, she held his hand while she slept. Utaka knew it was her habit, but when she happily called out his name in her dream, he was surprised that she even talked in her sleep. Utaka wondered where Tsumiki's wariness had gone. He guessed that it meant she felt safe around him, and he thought she was actually making him feel awkward. Mire greeted Kitu and thanked him for working hard since early morning. He asked if they were painting signs for the cultural festival. Kitu replied that she had also arrived very early and asked if she had a meeting. Mire said that she always arrived so early, just to clean around the school. Kitu felt like she deserved an award for this dedication. Mire apologized for the interruption and left, after saying that she was looking forward to seeing the results of the work. Kitu said that their class representative was really great, but his friend reminded him that Kitu had arrived early just to help, and that the art club was also a very commendable place. The biggest event of the 2nd semester is the cultural festival, and everyone is preparing for it. Mire was, of course, one of them. As the class representative for the first year, she had to work extremely hard. Tsumiki came to her with files on the winning themes from previous classes. They would soon be deciding on the theme for the festival, so she suggested using the previous files as a reference to win first place. Mire thought it was a great idea and decided to draw it as a percentage chart so everyone could see it. Tsumiki didn't understand what percentages meant, but before she could ask Mire, Utaka asked if she had some time because the teacher wanted to talk to her about the festival. Mire apologized to Tsumiki, but Tsumiki decided to look into it herself. Tsumiki said that Mire had been very busy this morning, and Utaka told her that Mire was very quick and efficient, which is why so many people came to her for help. Tsumiki began looking at the files and the things Mire had mentioned. Utaka offered to help and easily pointed out the percentages of all the topics in the files. Tsumiki said she really liked his math skills, but this compliment wasn't well received by the other boys. It seemed Mire had finally finished everything, but a friend came to ask her to check the budget again. Mire's snakes hissed at him, prompting Mire to tell everyone that it was a threatening act. His friend received the message and apologized. There's a lot of work to do, but she needs to go back to finish the presentation for class. She thought she just needed to work harder when she put a wet towel on her forehead. The two girls went into the girls' room and chatted while brushing their hair. They said they couldn't live without mirrors, which had nothing to do with Mire. So Mire left through the hallway. Kitu was surprised to see his name listed in the advertisement as part of the props group, even though he wasn't in the drama club. His friend explained that his name was there because he had helped them a lot. Kitu wanted his name written in large, clear letters, but the two boys ran into Mire with their art supplies. Mire fell down, but she apologized, saying it was because she wasn't paying attention. Kitu announced that she had gotten paint on her glasses, so she hid her glasses and apologized, asking them to clean it up. She went up to the rooftop and felt relieved that her Medusa glasses were still safe. However, when Kitu found her, she asked him to stop right there. She told him that she wasn't wearing her glasses at the moment and would put them on soon, so he just needed to wait a little while. Kitu said that wasn't necessary and asked if she wanted to use a mirror. He told her it was a prop from the drama club, and since she couldn't take off her glasses when people were around, she could use this. Mire told him that she still had to wear her glasses to look in the mirror, otherwise she would turn even herself to stone. Kitu asked if she had ever seen her face without glasses, and when she said no, he said that was sad. However, Mire didn't think so because she was Medusa, a genjin with the ability to turn others and herself into stone. It was just simple politeness and mostly just a wall she wore her special glasses on. With her glasses on, she could safely see other people's faces and most of her own, and that was great enough for her. She didn't really ask for anything more, but Kitu asked if she would like it if possible. Kitu said he was invisible, so there was nothing to see. What about her? Mire began to say she was Medusa, but Kitu made it clear that it wasn't about Medusa, but about what she wanted for herself. Mire admitted that it was something she had never considered. Kitu came up with a good idea. He knew that the essence of petrification was when she looked directly into someone's eyes. If there was something obscuring her vision, they wouldn't turn to stone. So he suggested he stand in the middle. She turned her back to Mire and slowly walked closer to look in the mirror and see her own face. She said it felt like a dream because she never thought she would see something like this in her life. Kitu said that although his only genjin power was the ability to become transparent, if he was the only one who could look into her eyes without turning to stone, then perhaps he was the strongest. He asked her what she thought of her real face, and she said that she really didn't like it when her hair was messy like this. She thanked Kitu because now she was clean, alert, and fully motivated. She could dedicate herself completely to the rest of the work. Kitu thought it was a beautiful face and continued onward. Sugimi announced that the press club creates and distributes flyers for the annual cultural festival, and that it's also very helpful for non-students. She's very excited about this. Tsumiki said they had just decided what their class would do. Then Sugimi asked if they were having any difficulties, as everyone looked completely exhausted. Tsumiki said they just decided that the first grade class will open a cosplay cafe. Tsumiki was shocked and started having all sorts of wild thoughts, while Tsumiki said that all the data about last year's winners usually consisted of fancy object exhibitions, but cosplay involved creating 2 costumes. However, Sugimi was completely exhausted because she wasn't prepared for this sudden outburst. Eventually, she realized why the whole class was like that. They never thought Tsumiki would come up with such an idea and were worried about whether they would be able to witness such a scene. Sugimi felt a little nervous standing in front of the door. She knocked and introduced herself as a member of the journalism club. The door swung open and a spider appeared, hanging upside down. Sugimi quickly apologized for the interruption and said that she was interviewing members of the art club, and she certainly wanted to hear the spider's opinion. The spider asked if she only wanted to hear her opinion as a member of the art club, and upon receiving confirmation, it agreed. Tomo Mokuri, a genjin of the insect type, has the nature of a spider. She became famous after posting artwork made from her own silk threads on social media, but then she suddenly stopped posting. This made Sugimi feel sad whenever she thought about never seeing her art posts again. It was hard to believe she was attending keiki school and was one of her classmates. So, Sugimi started with the first question and asked about the artwork she would be exhibiting at the cultural festival. She asked if the threads scattered throughout the nearly empty classroom were part of the artwork, since in her previous works, the threads themselves had become an integral part of the art. Before Sugimi could continue her rambling, Mokuri used her silk thread to interrupt her. Mokuri stated that she knew Sugimi was the one who had written the articles about genjin. "Genjin are amazing," she exclaimed, as if captivated by their very existence. She loved them and couldn't stop expressing it through her writings. However, Mokuri said that she didn't need that blind admiration because it wasn't pretty at all. She threw Sugimi's ball into the middle of the classroom. Sugimi was holding a letter requesting to withdraw, but Tsumiki, Utaka, and Sanga saw it and stopped her, asking if she wanted to talk about it. Sugimi said it was okay because she just needed to accept the consequences of her actions. Sanga asked what she had done to back down like that. Sugimi replied that she couldn't control herself. Lately, she felt that her blind and one-sided admiration might be making others uncomfortable. Because she liked them, because she felt positively about them, she was sure the other person would feel appreciated. Or at least, that's what she used to think. But those were just illusions. The more Sugimi likes someone, the more intense and suppressed her feelings become, so she feels she needs to be careful not to upset them. That's something she should have realized sooner. She wanted to be a wall. Her three friends wondered if she was experiencing a breakdown. Sugimi looked at the building and wondered how she could become a part of Keiki High School, thinking that if she could do that, these unpleasant thoughts would disappear and she would no longer be hurt or reveal herself. Sanga took the withdrawal letter and read it, saying that Mokuri was indeed aloof. But it was always a little awkward at first to begin accepting someone's feelings. He thought that if someone could genuinely accept those feelings, it would be like a small miracle. Utaka also read the letter and was impressed that Sugimi not only dared to express but also dared to confront her own feelings so clearly. Tsumiki took the letter and told her to listen to him for a moment, because if she really turned into a wall, she wouldn't be able to talk to them anymore. Sanga interrupted, telling her not to say such obvious things. Tsumiki said that the other person simply wasn't right for Sugimi this time, but she thought it would be a shame if Sugimi denied her intense feelings like that. Tsumiki was certain that there were amazing things only Sugimi could do. Sugimi wondered what she could do about these feelings, but still thanked them and said she would think about it more. In her room, Sugimi thought about how she had upset someone and how that couldn't be undone. Just because she liked something didn't mean she could let herself lose control. While she still couldn't fully accept her feelings, she realized there was something she could do. She began writing and publishing a notebook about cultural festivals. Mokuri also picked up the notebook to look at it and eventually picked up a paintbrush. Keiki High School's cultural festival will begin tomorrow. The school, which used to look rather dull, has now been brightly decorated. And as preparations were nearing completion, the first-year class was completely behind schedule. Utaka asked if the decorations were even half-finished yet, but Matsuiki said that most of the costumes were still unfinished. Matsuiki wondered why the situation had become so serious, but was then informed that the reason was that he and the costume design team had spent too much time arguing about the cosplay theme. Meanwhile, Mire said that since she was just a cashier, she didn't need a costume, but Tsumiki argued that she should cosplay to make her path to victory even more secure. Mire thought it would be difficult to figure out what to do with the costumes right now, but Tsumiki said to leave it to her, she'd be fine. The interior decoration that everyone was working on looked really beautiful, so they needed the cutest outfits to serve the guests well. This way they will win and create many more wonderful memories with the first graders. Thanks to Tsumiki's energy, the preparation speed increased dramatically. The classroom was now filled with a festive cultural atmosphere, so Utaka went to help the other students and ripped his shirt in the process. The boy apologized for not realizing Utaka was still wearing his uniform, but Utaka was glad he was able to help. He needed to get back to class quickly, so he rushed back and found Tsumiki yawning. He asked her what she was doing, and she replied that she was stretching. She said she had already sent everyone home because many of her friends had to go to their clubs, so she planned to finish the rest of the work herself. Utaka was impressed to see her doing everything on her own, but she said that she hadn't been sewing up those torn socks all this time just for fun. Utaka asked if she needed help, and she did, since now it was just her job left. She asked Utaka if he liked the cultural festival because she noticed everyone else looked tired and their limbs felt heavy, but his steps were still very light. Utaka said that he had never really thought about whether he liked the event or not, or if he just couldn't stop worrying about everyone around him and got caught up in it. When he sees his close friends in trouble, he can't just sit back and enjoy the good times alone. That's something he can't do. But because Tsumiki was present at the sports day, he was able to run as fast as he could and laugh freely without a worry. He was very happy to have been able to win together with everyone and to be part of the team without holding anything back, so he thought it was really great. Tsumiki noticed that his jacket pocket was torn, and he said it was because he was carrying equipment. Tsumiki offered to sew it up for him, but he hesitated a little. Tsumiki told him to turn towards her and then told him to take it off. Utaka repeated her words. Tsumiki said that when sewing clothes while still wearing them, you have to say that phrase as a good luck charm. Suddenly, she asked him if he was nervous and if he doubted her exceptional sewing skills, because your heart is beating too fast and too loudly. Then she realized she needed to get back to the main point. She said he was probably still tired after climbing the stairs as his face was flushed, and asked if he needed a rest, but Utaka said he was fine. So the two of them sat down seriously and sewed it together, and they finished. Tsumiki said they finished early thanks to Utaka's help, but Utaka said that she was the one who did almost everything and that she was amazing. Utaka said it was late and they should go home and rest, but Tsumiki had other plans because she wanted to try on the outfit. She wanted to double-check, even though she was very confident she had done it right, because even if you're confident, you should still double-check. That's exactly what Utaka had told her before the exam. But Tsumiki disappeared behind the curtain before he could say anything. Her fluffy tail wagged out from behind the curtain, causing Utaka to quickly turn away and pull the curtain back. He remained in that position while the rustling sound inside echoed in the silence. After a while, he asked if everything was all right, if there were any flaws in the stitching. Tsumiki said it was perfectly sewn, but when she came out, she complained that the outfit was too fussy. Utaka was taken aback because she was usually so confident. Tsumiki felt strange, but Utaka reassured her that it wasn't odd at all. Because she was usually energetic and cool, this new style created a completely different atmosphere and really suited her. He realized he should stop talking and blurted out the only thing that came to mind. She was the cutest. Tsumiki was surprised and hid behind the curtain again, while Utaka panicked, thinking he'd let slip something he shouldn't have, and said it too formally at that, but he really couldn't take his eyes off her. Tsumiki's face turned bright red, and she told him to forget about what had just happened, and not to think about it anymore. And so somehow, the two of them managed to complete all the preparations. The following morning, Keiki High School's cultural festival officially began, setting off a day full of suspense. Or perhaps not, thanks to Makuri. The festival was a great success right from the start, which thrilled Tsumiki. She observed the festive atmosphere and acknowledged that Keiki High School's cultural festival was truly vibrant. Tsumiki pointed out to Utaka that many people were gathered in the schoolyard. Utaka was impressed by the extremely popular balloon art display, and Tsumiki said that it was the booth of Class 1-2. With everyone having a chance to win, she encouraged everyone to do their best to attract customers. From the window, they heard someone sounding annoyed, which drew the group's attention. That's the spider girl Utaka met during the genjin nature measurement. Her name is Mokuri. She's telling the people in front of her that she's told them time and time again that she doesn't want to answer. Utaka realizes she's being harassed, while the others continue to demand that Makuri reveal that she is Tomo Makuri, a spider artist who became a social media phenomenon. But why did she suddenly delete all her work? They asked her to delete them when she was in 3rd grade of middle school, and when they thought she would reappear with her art for a cultural festival, she switched to a new art style without using her threads at all. So what was she thinking? They wanted to know her intentions. But Makuri couldn't stand their incessant chatter any longer, so she used her thread to fly like Spider-Man, saying they had gone too far. Even Tsumiki remarked that Makuri had truly encountered a difficult situation. Utaka recalled their previous interactions and wondered what had happened. The cosplay cafe was very busy, and as Utaka entered the staff-only area, he heard a knock on the window. That was Makuri. She asked if there were any empty seats. Utaka told her there were, so Makuri climbed in and sat down. Utaka wanted to say something to her, but then thought better of it and decided not to. Mukuri ordered the last choco, the Choco Deluxe. And when Utaka left, she breathed a sigh of relief. Utaka told Tsumiki that Mukuri seemed strange, and wondered if they were still chasing her. She seemed tense when someone was near her, and went into the shop through the window again. Tsumiki said the window was convenient, but that wasn't what Utaka meant. Tsumiki said that since Utaka was on break, she could handle the order for him, because she had mastered the art of customer service from her time working on the beach, so she would treat Mukuri perfectly. As mentioned, Tsumiki greeted Mukuri with a warm, home-like welcome on the beach, and Mukuri was impressed with the customer service. Mukuri asked the girl Clark Tsumiki if she could use her thread in the shop. She explained that, by her nature, she couldn't truly relax without weaving her web around the food, for fear that the food would run away. Tsumiki understood that perfectly because when she stored food, it had to be buried underground, otherwise it would be stolen. Mukuri understood that the ground was like a spider's web, as both were territories, but Utaka was worried because Tsumiki was sitting down with the customers. Tsumiki said that Mukuri had ordered the dish, so she thought Mukuri didn't need to ask permission. Mukuri said that even though Tsumiki didn't mind, there were many different kinds of people out there. She understood that this was precisely how Tsumiki was able to study here, and it would be best if things continued like this. Tsumiki thought for a moment, then stopped Mukuri because the dish still needed the final touch. Rosy cheeks and a drizzle of chocolate. The splash of chocolate syrup surprised Mukuri, but she still burst out laughing because she found it so artistic. Utaka was surprised because Mukuri always seemed distant and intimidating, yet she could still laugh so happily. As Mukuri left, Tsumiki asked Utaka if it was all right that he hadn't asked. Utaka was surprised that she'd noticed, but she said she'd been watching from the beginning. Utaka admitted that perhaps he should have said something, since Mukuri was still on the run from the reporters. But he also thought that the most important thing was to find out the root cause of the problem. Half the time he didn't ask because, even if he did, all he would get was the superficial explanation of what was bothering her at the moment. Doing anything without understanding the root of the problem is not an irresponsible act. Tsumiki said that Utaka always thinks too much about other people's boundaries. But she thought Utaka was right, and that was very true of him. Utaka thanked her, but still thought that ultimately he couldn't have done anything. He wanted to ask her what she would have done in that situation. Then suddenly they both heard a scream echoing throughout the school. Everyone was startled, whispering that the screams had come from the third floor, and beginning to wonder if some villain had appeared. However, Tsumiki said she heard the sound of spiderwebs, so she and Utaka excused themselves to go to where the sound was coming from. They quickly ran there and found many people gathered, discussing how strange the scene before them was. At the center of attention was Mukuri, standing before the bound paparazzi, telling them that she had told them to stop their chatter, as it was just a work of art made of spider silk. She understood that promotion was important, but still felt they shouldn't use her name, especially since she wasn't using spiderwebs in this artwork. It would just make no sense. She understood that the others were just doing their job, but she still wished they wouldn't overreact. Some feared that because she was Spider-Man, a genjin, her actions were going too far. She acknowledged that. In the student affairs office, she sat before a panel of teachers, and they concluded that the action could not be called self-defense. Mukuri replied that if she felt threatened, she would naturally fight back with all her might, and that she only used spider silk to do so. The teacher apologized for allowing it to happen due to insufficient supervision from the school, but also reminded her that she could not use her special nature to attack others. Although they understood that Mukuri had her reasons for doing so, she still overreacted. Of course, Mukuri knew that too. Once a little girl complimented her spiderwebs, saying they were beautiful. Mukuri asked her if she wasn't afraid of spiderwebs because at her previous school, everyone had screamed that she would catch them and then run away. But the little girl said it was cool, and even took a picture of it because she wanted to show off the beautiful spiderweb to her mother. Mukuri found the girl strange because she didn't seem scared at all, and from then on, the two often spent time together in the school's art room. The little girl posted photos of Mokuri's artwork on social media, and received countless likes because the spider silk art was truly amazing. Mukuri simply said it was great, but the little girl told her to cheer up a bit more. However, Mukuri had long known that her spider silk was beautiful, useful, and unique. The girl asked why Mokuri was asking if she was afraid of those things when she herself had said that spider silk was beautiful. Mokuri told her that most people are afraid. The girl suggested creating an account for Mokuri to post her artwork, as she wanted many people to be able to admire her beautiful spider silk art. Even Mokuri thought it was okay. However, when it's shown to a large audience, it also means receiving all sorts of opinions, and that feeling is strange and unreal. She understands that, and being quite strong-willed, she can endure it. But it was her friend who cried, feeling it was all her fault. Mokuri said there was no need to apologize because she was perfectly fine. But her friend didn't believe it because obviously it couldn't be okay. Everyone was saying terrible things about her friend, and she couldn't do anything about it. Mokuri realized that the situation was dire because although she herself was unharmed, someone else had been hurt by her spiderweb. Her friend stopped coming to school and the teachers asked if something had happened, since the two were very close friends. That day, Mokuri decided she would no longer use her spiderwebs. If they only caused her friend pain, they weren't worth using, even though they had once brought her so much joy. She cried and thought that if she weren't a genjin, if she weren't a spider, things would be different, but thinking that didn't help. At least nobody knew the artist was Spider-Man, so she couldn't come back anyway. Those ordinary days for her were something truly special. The disciplinary committee delivered its final verdict, and she accepted it. Outside the school grounds, Konami was informed of what had happened, and that Mokuri would be absent for a while. Tsumiki thought it was self-defense, so it wouldn't be long. Konami hoped so too. She asked Sanga to go back and bring more people, even though he was complaining about just returning. He couldn't understand why he had to wear women's clothes and even asked if there was any point in doing so. They said it was a role only he could play, but look at the current situation. Konami reminded him that he couldn't use his abilities to force people to vote. The temporary update indicated that the booth currently receiving the most votes was bubble art from classes 1 to 2, followed closely by class 1 to 1. Both Tsumiki and Konami exclaimed at the same time, "Prepare yourselves for a sting!" Konami was determined that no matter what happened, they would do their best until the very end and win this victory for Mokuri as well. She honestly admitted that a large part of the work was done by Mokuri, and that she always stayed up very late to perfect it. However, the joint seemed a bit weak. If she had used spider silk, it would certainly have been much more secure, but she didn't seem to want to. Sanga said that she should have used silk, because considering how meticulous she is with everything, this seemed strange. Tsumiki understood that Mokuri had also put his heart and soul into this festival. At that moment, a section of the artwork broke off and began to wobble. Mokuri walked out of the disciplinary office thinking that was fine too. However, from the window, she saw her artwork flying away along with Utaka. She walked closer to the window and saw Tsumiki calling her for help. The giant balloon was drifting away, carrying Utaka along, and Mokuri frantically asked what was happening. Tsumiki calmly announced that the anchor ropes of the bubble art installation had come loose. She tried to stop it, but Utaka clung on tightly and flew away with the balloon. Even Konami was panicking, saying that Utaka was completely overwhelmed. Sanga wondered why he didn't let go immediately, but he understood that this was just the kind of person Utaka was. A fool. Mokuri agreed to help, saying that the ribbons weren't securely attached to the ball, so they could come loose at any moment. Tsumiki also wanted to help. Of course, she needed to save Utaka, but if possible, they needed to save the ball as well. She said that their class was now evenly matched, so it would be terrible if their work flew away and her team won. Mokuri asked if now was the time to worry about that, and she said that she would use her silk to save people, but not to complete the actual work. Tsumiki couldn't say anything at this moment because Utaka was truly in danger. He was panicking, not knowing what to do, as the ball kept flying higher and higher, and his arm was aching. He thought back to when the rope was wrapped around his waist, and he saw Mokuri on the roof. She said she had him under control and he could let go, but Utaka was still worried about the ball. Mokuri told Utaka they had a spare ball in case this one got punctured. She felt sorry for her classmates, but the string was too weak and she could just remake it. However, Utaka's life was more important. Utaka asks if she really can't save both him and the ball. Mokuri wonders what's wrong with them both, but Utaka apologizes, saying she's trying to help him. But these balls are full of emotion anyway. So much feeling went into making them, And since he didn't really understand his own emotions, he found it amazing that people could transform those emotions into such a tangible object. Whatever those emotions might be, as someone who didn't know Mokuri very well, he knew he was just a burden, but he didn't want to give it up. Mokuri said that even though he didn't know anything, he really was a strange child. She told him to hold on a little tighter because if she pulled him, the rope might slip and that wouldn't be good, so she would stop from above. Mokuri wondered when she had started to calm her emotions. She had been trying to understand something that initially made no sense to her. To be honest, she'd been angry all this time. She'd been sad. But in the end, she was still herself. A genjin. A spider. She used silk. It was as simple as that. But they couldn't just let things continue like this. Well, she'll just accept it all because that's who she is. She creates a large net around the ball to hold it in place. However, the net isn't long enough to stretch across to the other side of the building. However, Tsumiki came to the rescue, grabbing the remaining piece of spider silk. Utaka was about to slip from the ball, so he called out Tsumiki's name, and she jumped towards him as Mokuri spun silk around her. Tsumiki successfully saved him. Mokuri was surprised by Tsumiki's actions. Utaka apologized for all the trouble and thanked both Mokuri and Tsumiki. Mokuri admitted that she almost had a heart attack, but still thanked them both. The ball returned to normal, and Utaka thanked everyone for their hard work. Meanwhile, Mokuri thought to himself that Utaka was getting too close to the enemy. She looked at the ball and told them to cover their ears as she prepared to detonate the large ball. Utaka panicked. After all their efforts, she had done it again. He asked if she really hated using silk that much. However, Mokuri says that doing so is better because the small balls will get caught in her silk. Tsumiki said that they could finally compete fairly, and Konami could already see their victory. Tsumiki couldn't wait for the results tomorrow and decided to return, doing her best for the final leg. Meanwhile, Konami ordered Sanga to go back and attract customers, but he said that even if she did nothing, customers would still come. Sanga asked Tsumiki why she didn't save Utaka when he flew away, since he's sure she could have easily saved him alone. Tsumiki recalls Utaka's worries and admits that she could have, but she just didn't want to. Sanga didn't understand, but Utaka thanked her. This is the second day of the Keiki High School Cultural Festival. Utaka, Matsuiki, and Kitu finished their shift at the Cosplay Cafe. Utaka thought that a lot had happened yesterday with so many ups and downs. The students were talking about the beautiful art exhibition of the second-year first-grade class. Utaka asked his friends what they would do afterward. Matsuiki then said that he would be attending an event at Arena No. 2, where Konami and Unami would be performing on a high-level stage. Utaka felt that this was a serious matter for his life. Kitu also had a packed schedule, from backstage support for the drama club, helping the band with drums, to guest appearances for the radio club. Sanga walked out of class and called out to Utaka, but was immediately surrounded by girls who wanted to go with him. Utaka realized that everyone has things they love and things they want to do. He glanced at his wristwatch and saw that there were still 3 hours until the closing ceremony. Tsumiki called out to him, wearing a flower crown and a sash that read, "Arm Wrestling Champion," making it clear to Utaka she was fully immersed in the festive atmosphere. It seemed her shift had just finished at the same time as his, and she had subsequently won the tournament. She glanced at the flyers in Utaka's hand and remarked that the tea ceremony experience looked interesting and was about to begin. She suggested they explore all the things only found at a school festival and invited Utaka along. However, when he asked if that would be okay with her friends, she said it was actually a bit difficult to arrange, so they would just greet each other as they passed by. Utaka guessed she must have received too many invitations, but Tsumiki looked at him and said that the school festival should be something truly exciting. Utaka agreed and went with her to the tea ceremony. Tsumiki said that tea rooms were only accessible during special club activities, making this a special moment of the cultural festival. Utaka admitted that entering a new place for the first time was always exciting. Both smelled a gentle fragrance upon entering, and upon seeing the sign indicating that shoes must be removed before entering, Tsumiki immediately complied. Utaka was impressed to see her take off her shoes so quickly that she almost tore them apart. He thought she was always so impressive, but this time she seemed to be deliberately showing off her legs more than usual. Tsumiki said they were really lucky today because there were only 3 seats left. The tea ceremony began, and they both drank tea. But then Tsumiki started trembling. Utaka anxiously asked if she was all right, and she replied that her legs were numb. She guessed it was because she had never sat in such a formal manner before. As she tried to stand up, she suddenly let out a small gasp and clutched Utaka's shirt. Her face flushed with embarrassment, saying she was just a little surprised. However, the others in the room felt numb for a completely different reason. Their next destination was the art club's exhibition hall. They met Mokuri at the information desk, who thanked them both for coming and asked them to sign up. While Utaka was writing, Mokuri noticed a bandage on his hand and asked if his hand was all right. Utaka said he was perfectly fine, but Mokuri found him surprisingly resilient. She had previously thought he was the type to keep his distance, yet he did so for someone else. He once said that he didn't really understand his own feelings, but Mokuri thanked him for doing that for her. Utaka said it was all thanks to Tsumiki, because she was the one who suggested they explore their feelings together. And if they weren't compatible in the end, they could simply go their separate ways. So he just wanted to say something, even if it might not be right for him. Mokuri said that she thought it was a precious encounter, even though they only talked a little, but perhaps Tsumiki's brightness had inspired everyone around her. After leaving the art club, they made their way to the food stalls. Tsumiki admitted that they ate a little late, but she had bought everything she wanted. Utaka asked if she was really okay not buying the fried hamburger, but she said he really didn't understand, because it was the school festival, so she absolutely had to eat the special treats that were only available today and could only be eaten now. Utaka wondered if that was really okay, since it was Tsumiki's favorite food, a fried meat sandwich only available on Fridays at the school cafeteria. He took a bite and she asked if the meat was tender. Utaka nodded, saying it was very tender. But Tsumiki kept staring at the bread until she finally asked if she could have a piece. Utaka agreed and was about to get one for her, but she unexpectedly bit into the one he was still eating. Utaka was stunned, while Tsumiki simply enjoyed her meal without thinking further and thanked him. Utaka looked back at the bread, and Tsumiki was surprised that her bite was much bigger than Utaka's. She then stuffed the remaining piece of cake into his mouth, telling him to eat it quickly, and asked if he wasn't afraid someone else would take it away, before turning back to eat her own lunch. Utaka thought it was a very special kind of thoughtfulness, while Tsumiki was thinking about what to eat next. Utaka felt Tsumiki's pace was overwhelming. Everything was happening so fast that his heart couldn't keep up. Right now, I desperately want to stay here, but at the same time, I want to run away. They suddenly heard an announcement that the closing ceremony would begin in a few minutes, so everyone was advised to quickly head to the school's gymnasium to attend. Tsumiki said they should hurry and grabbed Utaka's hand. Utaka never thought he'd have to rush there at the last minute, but time flew by when he was with Tsumiki. The exciting school festival was coming to an end, and Utaka believed there would be many more like it in the future. Irreplaceable days, that's the feeling he was experiencing. The next morning, Tsumiki woke up in her cave to the alarm clock ringing. She didn't want to get up, so she just tossed and turned and then took out her phone to scroll through the news. When she heard that her father had returned home after his night shift, she went out to greet him. He was surprised to see her still at home, so Tsumiki explained that she had the day off from school because of the recent cultural festival, and she planned to go karaoke with her classmates to celebrate. Her father was horrified because he knew that karaoke was something people did in a small room, singing loudly with a mysterious music box. He worried that Tsumiki would go deaf and that her ears would suffer excruciating pain. Tsumiki told her father that it was all right because she had brought her special super soundproof earplugs. But now her father was worried that she wouldn't be aware of her surroundings and would panic if someone suddenly walked in. Tsumiki reassured him that everything would be fine and told him not to worry too much. However, her father was still worried because she would have to sing. Tsumiki said she knew, so her father just told her to be careful. She didn't understand why he was so worried, but she nodded in agreement. After she left, her father paced back and forth, worried about whether she had arrived safely because she usually took a roundabout route. He hoped she would get to the karaoke place on time. He thought he should call her once, but the doorman reminded him that she had just left. He was always a worrier, while she always seemed fine when she went out. Her father admitted that was true, but he worried because she always appeared fine, and that was precisely what worried him more. Nowadays, living outside the home is much easier for Genjin than it used to be, and he thought that Tsumiki's comfort in going out was probably a good thing. From a young age, Tsumiki was always fascinated by the outside world, loving it for her cheerful nature, but once something happened. She had a big argument with a Genjin friend and got injured, but she didn't say anything. Because she looked normal, her father didn't notice either. He admitted that he didn't truly understand his daughter's situation, but he felt he needed to try harder. He didn't want to be seen as heartless. The gatekeeper reassured her that Tsumiki's current school was a perfect fit for her, as she always wagged her tail happily when going to school. Her father was delighted to hear this and recalled the first time she had invited a friend home since high school, but he wasn't home and missed the opportunity. The gatekeeper remembered the small, gentle boy, surprising her father because it turned out that the friend Tsumiki had invited was a boy. At this point, Tsumiki arrived and met everyone, who were all very excited. The girls in the group thought that Kitu was a bit too good at adjusting the sound for karaoke, while Mutsuki was the opposite. Not very good at singing. Tsumiki was delighted that the pool cleaning crew had managed to book a room together, although the current atmosphere felt more like a celebratory launch party. Next up was Utaka's turn, and he seemed surprisingly excited about it. However, Utaka's singing voice was completely devoid of emotion, surprising everyone. Kitu argued that Utaka shouldn't be underestimated, as singing with such an expressionless face could also be a kind of talent. But Tsumiki thought he was still in the process of searching for something. When it was Mire's turn, she grabbed the microphone and performed with great enthusiasm. Whether the song was a ballad or a love song, she sang it in an extremely fiery rock style. Tsumiki found Mire's singing quite good and was later asked to choose a song to sing. Although Tsumiki admitted she wasn't good at hitting the right notes, she still loved singing. Once, as soon as she got home, her father asked if anything had happened at school, if anything had upset or bothered her. Tsumiki replied that nothing bad had happened. Her father then asked if there was anything she didn't understand, and Tsumiki explained that the whole class was practicing a song for the annual performance. However, everyone was singing too loudly, distracting her and preventing her from singing correctly. Then there were those who said, "Since she's Tsumiki, there's nothing she can do about it," as if she couldn't change anything. Even so, she knew that with more practice she could get better because singing was what made her happy. She even asked her father to practice singing with her. Now, in the karaoke room, Tsumiki sings so loudly that everyone is stunned, but everyone enjoys it and savors the moment. She even made cute dance moves with her hands. This made Utaka understand that she was suggesting everyone line up in 2 rows in front to sing her song together. The whole group, of course, enthusiastically followed suit, all gathering together and enjoying the joyful moment. Tsumiki turned on the video recording and sent it to her father. When he played it, the loud sound startled the whole family, but they immediately recognized it as Tsumiki's voice. Her father recalled the time she asked him to practice singing with her to prepare for a school performance, and they practiced together until she could sing well. Now, in the video, the little girl looks genuinely happy. He asked the children in the house if any of those friends had ever come to play at their house, but the children avoided his gaze, knowing full well that they absolutely could not tell their father about Utaka. Tsumiki is currently truly content in the gentle breeze, the pleasant rustling of leaves, and the gradually spreading scent of autumn. She felt perfect when she buried herself in a pile of dry leaves. A group of students passing by saw the scene, and she even invited them to join her in bathing in the leaves. But the girls immediately refused, certain that there would be insects in the leaves. Nevertheless, both boys and girls found Tsumiki adorable because she was a free spirit, able to feel comfortable and happy anywhere. They guessed that Tsumiki had probably gone somewhere to play alone again, and indeed she had. However, she still happily chatted with everyone, so everyone agreed that she was truly the friendliest loner ever. Everyone was ready to sign the petition recognizing her as the best. It seemed Tsumiki had finished her herbal bath and was getting up to leave. But on the way she met Utaka, whose face was pale. When she asked him what was wrong, she learned that he had just looked at the school's bulletin board and was overwhelmed by the sheer number of club activities. Utaka started thinking about joining a club because every day after school his friends were busy with their own clubs while he wasn't. But instead of feeling lonely, Utaka, a boy as cute as a cinnamon roll, found it wonderful that everyone else had something they were passionate about. It shone so brightly that he wanted to find something similar for himself. Tsumiki listened and said seductively that he wanted to experience that feeling, the feeling of truly liking something. And then she decided to help him. She explained that he wouldn't know if he liked it or not unless he tried. So, to begin with, she took him to learn more about the student council. After school, as a sports club's running team sped past in the wind, it was Utaka whose heart was pounding, and he was incredibly nervous. He'd never considered joining the student council, but then he thought, who knows what might happen if he didn't try. Even so, Utaka understood that joining the student council right away might be too big a step. However, Tsumiki insisted that they had to tackle the difficult part first. Suddenly, Utaka was startled to see a group of boys surrounding a girl with horns. The girl seemed quite happy to be the attention, and when the boys expressed their affection for her, she simply laughed and said, "It's succubus time." Like most people, Utaka thought, what the heck? But the boys lined up neatly, bowing their heads to make way, leaving Utaka standing there bewildered. Utaka had no choice but to join the line and began observing the girl, a genjin of the succubus type. But he didn't know much about the nature of this species. The succubus girl stared directly at a boy, and with just a gentle touch of her hand to his chin, he fell for her. Utaka also realized that anyone who looked at her would fall for her. But when he noticed a bulge on the girl's back, he didn't hesitate to tell her. The girl blushed immediately and removed the bulging object herself, saying that she had only just checked her clothes. Utaka helped her remove the small insect clinging to her, received her thanks, and quickly made an excuse about having an appointment to leave. However, that small act of kindness was enough to make the succubus girl begin to take an interest in Utaka. The student council work began with equipment maintenance, so Utaka and Tsumiki worked hard together, sweating profusely. They even had to take off their jackets midway through because it was too hot. They should have worn short-sleeved shirts from the start. The most basic job of the student council is equipment maintenance, but because the school has so many genjin students, things often get damaged. The equipment recovery bin even contained the cabinet door that Tsumiki had bent in the early chapters. Quite a nostalgic reminder. Having finished their task, they decided to return to the student council room. However, Utaka accidentally put on Tsumiki's jacket instead. Tsumiki pointed out Utaka's mistake, and Utaka realized that the shirt smelled different, but Tsumiki immediately told him not to smell it. Utaka apologized, but Tsumiki explained that she had worn the shirt for a while and sweated a lot, so now it had an unpleasant smell. She asked Utaka to take it off, and although Utaka thought it was no problem, he complied. Tsumiki took the jacket, put it on and sniffed it. This made Utaka promise not to make such a mistake again. However, she didn't seem too bothered, because the scent had now blended together, subtly different from when she first took it off. After thoroughly deodorizing themselves, Tsumiki and Utaka entered the student council room to inform everyone that they had completed the equipment check. However, when they entered, they found the succubus girl reapplying her makeup in the meeting room. The two seemed to know each other, and it was then that we learned the succubus girl's name was Ako. Unexpectedly, Ako said she had a promise to Tsumiki, but Tsumiki didn't understand what she meant. Ako didn't explain, but instead approached Utaka and asked his name. When Utaka introduced himself, Ako started doing a cabaret-like performance, then said that she was becoming even more interested in him and asked him to be her boyfriend. This startled Tsumiki, but Utaka wasn't surprised at all. He pointed to her ear and said she had something on it. Ako blushed and explained that she had only rested her head there earlier, but inwardly she felt flustered because Utaka wasn't looking her in the eye, always looking away. An announcement came in asking Ako to go to the teacher's room, so she had to leave. But before she left, she continued to think that Utaka seemed to be quite close friends with Tsumiki, but if he kept avoiding her gaze, there was no way he could possibly like her. Utaka felt that Ako had a rather impressive aura, but Tsumiki warned him not to look directly into her eyes. Utaka didn't understand the warning. Even though Tsumiki knew Ako, she explained that they had gone to the same junior high school. However, Ako was very different now. When the bell rang, Utaka said that since they would be trying out for student council work tomorrow, they should go home now. However, Tsumiki seemed a little nervous as she compared parts of herself to Ako, especially in the way Ako applied her makeup and the materials she was working on. This girl, Ako Yumanaka, was preparing for the day and determined to do everything perfectly as always. Since entering Keiki High School, which has been over a year, Ako, who lacked the confidence she had in high school, can now live proudly of herself. Her daily efforts finally paid off, and she became the perfect version of herself that everyone loved. Of course, she understood that wanting to be loved for who you are is valuable, but she thought it was too naive and required real effort. Therefore, her shortcut was to frequently display her cute side to attract attention. Ako believes her destined one might be one of her admirers, but she knows it's just a joke. Utaka also notices her in the crowd, and he observes that anyone who speaks to her begins to smile brightly. As she walked by, a baseball team bowed their heads to thank her for retrieving the ball they couldn't reach the day before. Eiko captivated everyone with her beauty and a touch of encouragement for the morning practice. She wanted people to like her, but didn't want to force them to. However, it's wonderful to hear people say thank you, so today is another great day. In the student council room, someone asked Akko for help, and she happily complied. Utaka remarked that Akko was always very busy. Tsumiki, determined not to be outdone, encouraged Utaka to do their best as well. Akko seems to be searching for something, but so far her efforts have been fruitless. She worries that not finding the document will cause a major problem for everyone, so she needs to find it quickly. Tsumiki and Utaka decide to help her when they notice she's looking for something, but Akko says she'll handle it herself, as it's her fault. Tsumiki suggested that it might be faster if she asked for help from others, but Akko thought that was impossible since she was a succubus. If she asked someone else for help, they might think she had attracted them to her. The problem isn't just any ordinary succubus, but Akko Yamanaka, the succubus everyone adores. She needs to prove to everyone that she can do everything without relying on her succubus powers. She went on to say that she wasn't like Tsumiki, so if she wasn't a perfect Akko, things wouldn't be okay. Akko Yamanaka asked them to leave her alone, but Tsumiki suddenly started sniffing her. Akko thought it was embarrassing, but Tsumiki said it wasn't. She said that Akko was always focused on perfection, so they should search together. The purpose of the sniffing was to find Akko's scent, and from there find the lost documents. Finally, Akko tells them that the document is pink, and that the information inside is very important. Tsumiki teams up with Utaka to find it, while Akko follows behind. They quickly found the file thanks to Tsumiki's sense of smell. After giving it to Akko, Tsumiki decided to leave. Utaka heard Akko say, "At least wait for a thank you," and she also commented that Tsumiki was always like that, just showing up and helping without expecting anything in return. Utaka told her that they had met Akko this morning, and he wondered why she had a bug on her yesterday. But it turned out to be because she had helped someone, as usual. He wanted to help her as she had helped others. Then Utaka said goodbye and left, but Akko blushed and remarked that he was just like Tsumiki. Utaka is filling out the club application form, but it seems Tsumiki has already finished and only needs to submit it. She signed up for the student council because they were for excellent students, and apparently their work wasn't too demanding, only involving major events. Tsumiki thanked Utaka for yesterday because she said that Akko could work very hard for others and also be very harsh on herself. If they hadn't found the document, Akko would have fallen into complete despair. Utaka replied that they had found the document thanks to Tsumiki's keen sense of smell. Seeing them both, he thought it would be great if he could help people too. Utaka found it quite difficult to know exactly what he wanted, but he decided to apply to join the student council. When they arrived at the student council room, Akko took the applications as the vice president of the student council and said she was happy to work with them both. However, both Utaka and Tsumiki were surprised to learn that she was the vice president. Akko Yamanaka, a sophomore at Keiki High School, is a succubus of the genjin race, always striving for perfection so that everyone will fall in love with her. At least that's how she's lived before. But when she lost her documents, everyone at school wanted to help her fix the mistake, except for Tsumiki and Utaka, who didn't embarrass her. Akko couldn't even make eye contact with Utaka to use her charm, because everything he saw made her feel embarrassed. Furthermore, he praised her for always helping others, which annoyed Akko. So she was determined to attract him in some way. At that moment, she received a notification about good fortune on her phone and felt it might be a sign of something for the future. Akko announces that she will teach them both how to work in the student council. Utaka, with a naive expression, takes it very seriously, but Tsumiki only asks if Akko is in charge of them. Somehow, Akko feels offended and asks if they don't like the idea of her being in charge. She explained that although the student council would be on break today and tomorrow, she just wanted to show them the schedule of upcoming activities today. She said that Utaka could deliver the documents, and Tsumiki could help her stamp the papers. Utaka followed her instructions and immediately left to deliver the documents, creating the perfect opportunity for Akko to investigate as Tsumiki seemed close to Utaka. Tsumiki guessed that there was something Akko wanted to say, Therefore, Ako praised her perceptiveness and decided to ask directly about Tsumiki's thoughts on Utaka. Tsumiki was a little surprised at first, but eventually she said that Utaka was a thoughtful person, somewhat reserved, but in a way gave off a warm feeling. She smiled and said that he was very important to her. Ako realized that was the way of speaking for people who were important to Tsumiki, so she said it's like love because no one can make an important person feel more special than that. Ako knew that Tsumiki had never dated anyone, but she was sure that Utaka felt the same way. However, this wouldn't stop her from making the first move. But for Tsumiki, Ako's words left a feeling she couldn't forget. Utaka entered the classroom as usual, but found Ako sitting in his chair. He asked for the reason, but she only answered vaguely. Outside the classroom, students gathered to watch. Not just Tsumiki anymore, but now Utaka was also close to Ako. They were now genuinely envious of his friendship with both girls, but some still favored Tsumiki more. Sugami, who observed Genjin, knew that Ako's abilities required certain conditions to activate, and although the effects might vary from person to person, they didn't last long. However, Sugimi still hoped that nothing was going on between them. On the other hand, Utaka asked if there was any unfinished work or anything that needed resolving. Ako, however, didn't stop there, asking if simply wanting to see Utaka immediately wasn't enough. Even the audience couldn't resist her sweet attack. But Utaka remained unfazed and simply thanked her. The audience was somewhat offended by Utaka's reaction, but Tsumiki walked in with messy hair and broke the atmosphere. She thought her messy hair was a work of art, and when Ako asked if she still used the window to break into class, Tsumiki slightly ignored her and said her hair looked like a work of art. Even when Tsumiki realized Ako was sitting at Utaka's desk, she didn't say anything. Utaka asked if Tsumiki had only come to show off her hair, to which she proudly replied that she had come carefully to avoid messing it up, so she was almost late. Tsumiki was immediately surrounded by people, making Ako envious of the affection everyone showed her. However, Ako still left after reminding Utaka not to forget her special after-school tutoring session. She wouldn't give up because today Ako was the luckiest girl in the world. However, she hadn't read her prediction carefully yet, so she was doing it right now in the student council room. When Utaka entered, Ako invited him to sit down and said that, to strengthen their relationship, the first thing was to get to know each other. Ako approached and said she would tell everything about herself if it was Utaka, from the smoothness of her horns to the incredible softness of her tail. She asked if he wanted to touch her, but Utaka simply replied, "No, I'm fine." That wasn't the response she expected. She tried her best but only made herself feel embarrassed, and he looked away at the most opportune moment. Furthermore, her position was quite awkward, and to make matters worse, the chair tilted, causing them both to fall. Ako immediately apologized and asked if he was all right. But when Utaka told her not to worry, Ako sighed and said that since yesterday she hadn't been able to do anything perfectly. However, Utaka told her that he had thought a lot about what he wanted to say. Ako is always proactive and actively seeks ways to deepen relationships with others, and that makes him feel very admired. For him, stepping out and doing so requires a lot of courage, and he wishes he could do the same, so Ako is amazing for that. Ako remained silent, but something else made her feel uneasy. Utaka had maintained eye contact for a long time, yet he remained unmoved by her charm. She couldn't believe it because she had previously read that there would be a loyal man, not easily swayed by her charm. She realized that Utaka was her destiny, and immediately, a picture full of flowers and foliage, like something out of a shoujo manga, appeared in her mind. Utaka only wanted to help her stand up, but she yelled that grabbing her hand so suddenly was too much. A succubus saying something like that, how ironic, isn't it? She left that day, leaving Utaka feeling anxious that he might have said something wrong. Tsumiki woke up in class after oversleeping, but couldn't stop thinking about what Ako had said about love and Utaka, about wanting to find the feeling of liking something. In the end, Tsumiki could only conclude that things were very complicated. Ako went to the student council office to talk about a volunteer camp. She explained that it was still some time away, but she wanted them to know in advance so they could prepare accordingly. Ako said she really wanted both of them to join, but when her eyes fell on Utaka, her face flushed. She patted her head to reassure herself, because even if Utaka was her destiny, she still had to work for the student council. She was sure everything would be fine if she acted perfectly as always. Tsumiki gently pointed out that the exit was in the opposite direction and remarked that there had been a strange atmosphere since this morning, asking Utaka if anything was wrong. Utaka suddenly remembered what had happened after school yesterday, and his face turned pale, thinking that perhaps he had done something inappropriate. Even though they didn't know each other very well, he had already started complimenting her as an amazing senpai, and now Ako definitely thought he was a weird kohai. Utaka was certain that this was the reason she acted that way, and he felt sad, thinking he had ruined everything. However, Ako left, saying she had to go out to take care of another matter, leaving Utaka looking pale behind her. Just then, Umami walked into the room and asked if they were both going to join the student council. She actually had a favor to ask, as there seemed to be a small problem. Tsumiki and Utaka were willing to help, as it was their first job. All three ran to the scene of the incident and to the temperature control area, which was set to a cold temperature. Utaka wasn't surprised to see such a facility, as this was something Keiki High needed, with facilities suited to the characteristics of genjin students. Unami explained that the problem was that the room temperature wouldn't go down, and the snow had started to melt. Tsumiki asked if she just wanted to adjust the room temperature, but Unami explained that she wanted to create a surprise for her friend's birthday, who is a Yeti. She understood that the temperature needed to be brought back down to a level where the snow wouldn't melt, because things couldn't continue like this. When they started working, Tsumiki and Utaka led the repairman to the temperature control room. And now, everything is fine. As the temperature in the room began to drop, they started preparing for the surprise party. Utaka asked the girls if they weren't cold wearing just those clothes, but the girls replied that it was fine because unicorns and werewolves are resistant to the cold. Without hesitation, all three set to work preparing. Unami observed Tsumiki's work and said that she didn't want an igloo. Because the mini snowman looked so cute, she wanted the room to be filled with adorable things. However, the Tsumiki argued that igloos are great because they're like little houses, so having one would be better. Utaka noticed they were arguing and was then asked to decide which idea was better. Utaka thought that the surprise birthday plan was Unami's idea, and Tsumiki's suggestion to make an igloo also had its own logic. But the most important thing was that the surprise party went smoothly. Finally, after completing them, they had both cute little snowmen and a large snowman-shaped igloo. Both girls agreed that it looked beautiful, and Utaka was happy that everything had gone well. Unami tells Utaka that her friend Yeti doesn't want to use the room because his nature causes the surrounding temperature to drop sharply, so he refuses to enter to avoid chilling the air too much, even though he actually loves snow. Unami was sure her friends would be delighted to use the room, so she thanked them both and left to buy more decorations. Utaka offered to return, but Tsumiki's tail was wagging excitedly as she looked at the snow. He asked if she wanted to continue preparing, but instead of answering, Tsumiki asked if he was cold. Utaka said he was fine because he had been exercising constantly. Tsumiki touched the snow, unable to resist its allure, and Utaka couldn't help but say that Tsumiki was amazing as always. However, Tsumiki sarcastically remarked that she had just argued with Unami, so it was indeed quite impressive. Utaka replied that lately he often blurted things out without thinking, only to reflect on them afterward. It seemed that when he tried to say something sincere, he became flustered and felt like he was intruding too much on others. He admitted that he still had a lot to improve, but Tsumiki said that Utaka always knew how to convey the important things at the right time, and he had always been like that. Utaka seemed moved by that, so Tsumiki commented that he was cheering up. Utaka told her not to get too cocky, but she laughed and said that it's good to relax a little sometimes. She showed off the igloo she had just finished making, thanks to Utaka's encouragement, and said she wanted to make an even bigger one. She hoped winter would come soon and that it would snow this year, which made Utaka laugh. Tsumiki also laughed and pulled Utaka into the igloo because his hands had turned red, and she was worried he would catch a cold again. Inside, she asked him if he felt warm, and Utaka confirmed that he did, but remarked that this igloo was smaller than the cave she had made before. After a moment of silence, he confessed that Ako had probably been acting strangely lately because of him, and he was thinking of asking her directly so they could understand each other better and get closer. However, Tsumiki spoke up and said that he should also get closer to her. Utaka blushed slightly and said that he was already quite close to Tsumiki, but she replied that she would be even more proactive. Meanwhile, Sanga is up to something bad again. He's using his good looks to arrange a date with a girl at school. The girl was delighted to meet such a handsome man, and Sanga even allowed her to gaze at him for as long as she liked. She half-jokingly said that his beauty was irritating, but she still loved him. At that moment, she received a text message and immediately blushed as she replied, which did not escape Sanga's notice. He then said that he wasn't hungry today because it was the day he was receiving blood donations, so he didn't need her blood anymore. The girl was a little surprised to hear this, but Sanga still maintained his charming demeanor and apologized for taking the time to meet her. The girl smiled, saying that it was still a pleasure to meet him, but her friend needed her, so she had to leave. After she left, Sanga noted that someone was interested in that girl, so he should be more careful from now on because he didn't like trouble in relationships. He decided to submit his application and go home, but he unexpectedly stumbled upon Akko's so-called strange succubus hour. Sanga remembered that Akko was a succubus, but still couldn't understand how she could handle so many people at once. However, what surprised Sanga even more was that Utaka was also queuing up to participate. He immediately pulled Utaka aside, but Utaka said he was waiting his turn because he had something important to tell Akko. Sanga couldn't understand, so Utaka explained that he needed to look into Akko's eyes and talk seriously. Sanga knew that anyone would be drawn to Akko if they looked into her eyes, but surprisingly, Utaka seemed disappointed that the succubus time was over. After school, Utaka didn't go home right away, but was helping others with some chores. But that was fine with him because he was planning to go to the student council room anyway. Meanwhile, Sanga, looking more like a stalker than a spy, was observing from a distance and saw Utaka heading towards the student council. He guessed that Utaka was going to meet Akko and began to worry about whether he was okay going alone. Sanga wondered if he should secretly follow Utaka, but suddenly Tsumiki appeared from nowhere and warned that his scent would give him away. Sanga explained that Utaka seemed to be falling into a succubus's trap because he had stood in line with a strange group of people just to talk to her. However, Tsumiki seemed pleased as she explained that this time Utaka was crossing some kind of line with Akko. Sanga didn't understand what she was talking about, but a commotion at the end of the hallway drew their attention. They found Makuri seemingly trapped in his own web, causing Utaka to panic and try to help. Sanga commented that Utaka had an excessive frequency of encountering events, while Tsumiki attributed it to his personality, always making others want to rely on him. Sanga suspected it was due to his genjin nature, but then remembered Utaka was just an ordinary human. He worried that if Utaka kept trying to handle everything like that, there would be no end to it. When Tsumiki teased him about worrying about Utaka, Sanga maintained his serious demeanor, admitting that he simply couldn't understand Utaka. According to him, it's best to maintain superficial relationships with many people, so that if something bad happens, that person can easily move on. However, Utaka got too close to others without realizing it. He always acts with others in mind, so if something bad happens, the consequences will be significant. While talking, the two quietly followed Utaka to where they were meeting Akko, but Tsumiki's ears drooped slightly. This was Sanga's chance to ask her if she was worried about Utaka and if it was okay to leave the two of them alone together. Tsumiki didn't understand his implication, so she decided to wait outside until they finished. Sanga felt confused, but then understood that Utaka wanted to talk to Akko to take their relationship to the next level, and Tsumiki was quietly watching him. He knew he shouldn't stop Tsumiki, but he still didn't understand why Utaka wanted to shoulder everything himself. Sanga decided to go home because these kinds of things really didn't suit him. He felt that keeping relationships superficial and broad would make life easier. Utaka was his first friend, so Sanga didn't really understand him completely. But Tsumiki said that Utaka didn't really understand it either. He didn't know how far to intrude into other people's lives, and sometimes he went too deep. It was somewhat selfish because no one asked him to. But sometimes that very selfishness saved someone's life. Tsumiki tells Sanga that he should also try being a little selfish, even if it's just her own selfish idea. Sanga still thought Tsumiki was a nuisance, but eventually returned to check on Utaka, even though it's not my style, because he always kept his relationships at a broad and superficial level. Sanga dramatically opened the door and loudly demanded that Akko stay away from her best friend. But Utaka and Akko were seriously working, making the situation extremely awkward. Akko immediately switched to a serious tone, introducing herself formally despite clearly knowing Sanga beforehand. She said she had heard many rumors about him and, because they had quite similar personalities, told him to feel free to ask for advice if needed. Sanga looked skeptical, not believing this was the same person who had just pulled off those strange succubus time stunts. Eiko just laughed, explaining that it was a kind of fan service, and that she not only wanted to absorb energy, but also wanted to become a perfect succubus. Sanga, a notorious womanizer, began to wonder if she really wasn't as dangerous as he thought, but he couldn't be sure. So he turned to look at Utaka to check if he was really alright. Utaka felt incredibly happy when Sanga called him best friend, which made him extremely joyful. Gradually, Sanga realized that they were both just working normally. Nothing strange at all. At that moment, Tsumiki entered the room and patted Sanga on the shoulder, saying that the atmosphere in the room was too hot. She explained that both Utaka and Akko worked very quickly, as she could hear them from the hallway. It was then that Sanga realized Tsumiki had done all of this intentionally. Tsumiki was playing soccer, and Sugimi was happily taking pictures because she was in charge of taking photos for the school's website. Utaka was impressed by her important work, and Sugimi explained that her job was simply to update new photos of classes and club activities. She also mentioned that she will be participating in a volunteer camp soon, as the school will be organizing one as a member of the journalism club. Conversely, Sanga didn't quite understand the volunteer camp, thinking it was just a way to improve the school's image through community activities. He felt they were overdoing it, even though he knew it might actually have some benefits. Utaka felt a little sad hearing Sanga say that, but Sanga didn't hesitate to say that since Akko was in charge of the volunteer camp, who knows when this succubus might use her abilities to attract others. He said that Utaka was too strict with himself, but also too naive for his own benefit. Although he was always considerate of others, if something was wrong, he should let Sanga know. Sugimi wondered if Sanga was protecting Utaka, but kept that thought to herself. She also asked if they both wanted to play a game since they were both very fast. Utaka pointed out that they didn't actually need to be fast, because the spider girl Mokuri used her abilities to tightly lock down all of his threads. Even Sanga had to admit that it was impossible to counter such a defense. However, Sugimi found this type of defense very interesting. Conversely, Tsumiki knew that she only needed to break the spider web to score points, so she used her powerful wolf-like kick. However, no one knew what she was aiming for. That kick had an incredibly long range, but Sugimi managed to capture photos of Tsumiki's amazing kicking power. However, Mokuri was still deep in thought, even as time passed. Sugimi entered the gym and announced that she was there to take photos for the drama club's homepage. However, she only met Mokuri, who was from the art club. Mokuri explained that she was just helping out, as all the stage crew members had colds, and the work needed to be finished today, so she was lending a hand. Sugimi felt rather awkward because she hadn't spoken to Mokuri since the cultural festival. She needed the photos, but didn't want to bother Mokuri again, so she decided to leave. However, Mokuri asked if she could draw and if he could help her a little. Mokuri said it was just a sweep, then a punch, and finally a quick kiss. These instructions were too vague, but Sugimi still tried to do it. However, she was distracted by Mokuri's chewing sounds and genuinely worried about her caffeine intake. Mokuri said that spiders only get a little tipsy, but that's the easiest way to regain energy, so it's fine. She was a little tipsy herself when she said it would be okay as long as you don't eat too much, but Sugimi didn't know what too much meant. Sugimi wanted Mokuri to review her work, but was so captivated by her appearance that she couldn't take her eyes off her. Mokuri realized Sugimi had stopped working and gently apologized. Then they said they could take pictures after they finished. Sugimi asked if Mokuri cared about being photographed, to which Mokuri replied that she didn't look good in photos, but Sugimi's photos on social media were perfectly fine. Mokuri recounts that she used to have a personal photographer, who initially only took photos to preserve her artworks because she couldn't keep all of them in physical form. But if they were preserved in image form, she could look back at them anytime. However, she started posting them on social media, and that was enough. But in the end, the only thing people cared about was that she was a Spider-Man. Sugimi had heard all sorts of rumors and gossip about Mokuri's past, so she knew that Mokuri had suddenly deleted all of her work, and she must have had a good reason for doing so. Sugimi recalled that she herself had once asked Mokuri if he was Spider-Man, so she apologized for what happened that day. She admitted that she was drawn to things she lacked. She invited them and then rushed into things without thinking it through. But when that admiration turned towards someone's genjin nature, the nuances of that admiration inevitably changed. It's like this. We admire someone who runs fast or sings well, and we respect those people, whether human or genjin, She couldn't help but admire talented people. She apologized to Mokuri again, saying she didn't need Mokuri's recognition, but her words were cut short by Mokuri. People called her a strange child, but also said that she understood. Sugimi checked her camera and ran after Mokuri, rambling on about everything they had done so far. Mokuri remarked that she talked a lot, but also asked what was wrong when she suddenly stopped. It turns out Sugimi left the manuscript she needed for tomorrow in the classroom, and is now frantically talking about it. Sugimi was about to run off to retrieve the manuscript, but Mokuri, not understanding the urgency, wrapped Sugimi in spiderwebs and said this was her way of thanking her for helping her. Like Spider-Man, they both soared towards the classroom. Sugimi was completely panicked. Upon arrival, Mokuri tells Sugimi to quickly grab her things before the teacher arrives. Just then, the teacher shows up to scold them, but they disappear before he realizes what's happening, as Mokuri transforms into Spider-Man again. The next day, Mokuri was greeted by her friends while looking at the photos. When they asked what she was looking at, Mokuri explained that a noisy but sharp-eyed child had taken some pictures. If she ever needs someone to take a photo again, she'll choose Sugimi, although seeing it in person is still the best option. Meanwhile, Utaka is convinced he's somehow unintentionally offended Ako, while Ako is obsessed with Utaka and believes he's her destined soulmate. What hilarious and awkward situations will these bizarre misunderstandings lead them into? To resolve the issue, Utaka arranged to meet Ako very early and apologized for it, but Ako calmly and comfortably accepted. Utaka then began to say that he wanted to tell Ako something he hadn't had a chance to say the day before. Ako was listening very attentively, but she had her back to Utaka. She pondered over being summoned by Utaka to such a secluded place early in the morning, and felt that Utaka was much bolder than he appeared. Meanwhile, Utaka thought Ako hated him so much he couldn't bear to look at her, but he still tried to muster the courage to offer a helping hand. However, Ako screamed and ran away, unable to bear the situation. Utaka was left wondering what he should do. At that moment, Tsumiki suddenly appeared from underground and said that Utaka had gotten into trouble again. Utaka kept rambling on about how bad he felt for forcing Ako, but Tsumiki told him he just needed to tell her clearly to stay and listen to him. Tsumiki was now certain that her friend needed special training to accomplish such a simple thing. After receiving all the money, Tsumiki received a Tower of Happiness, and that's how the day ended. Utaka wondered about the special training Tsumiki mentioned, and imagined it would involve greeting 1,000 different people. However, upon arriving, he found Tsumiki disguised as Ako, dressed exactly like her and impersonating her. She explained that since Utaka didn't truly understand Ako, she would help, having spent 2 years in junior high talking to Ako. Tsumiki wanted to begin the training session, but Utaka wondered why she would go to such trouble. Tsumiki explained that because Utaka had always tried his best and was important to her, she wanted to help him in some way. She suggested he try hurting the simulated version of Ako, but Utaka thanked her instead. She added that she would also be happy if her two close friends, Ako and Utaka, became good friends with each other. There was a strange hesitation, but then both of them began the special training session. Tsumiki-sensei explained that they would first delve into Ako's personality and genjin nature. She wrote down many things, but the most important one was Ako's tail, because when she's happy, her tail wags, and Ako takes very good care of it. Tsumiki couldn't deny that receiving genuine praise made anyone happy, and then she started talking about taking care of and cleaning her tail. Utaka noticed that Ako suddenly resembled a werewolf, but also noticed that Tsumiki herself was wagging her tail when talking about Ako. Utaka thanked her, but Tsumiki said that the special training wasn't over yet. According to her, the secret to becoming friends is simply to do what you want to do, and somehow you'll become friends. Utaka pointed out that only Tsumiki could do that, and if she told him to do whatever he wanted, he wasn't sure what he would think. He just hoped that Ako would be happy if he did. Tsumiki pointed to her ear, and when Utaka guessed she wanted it scratched, she immediately leaned forward, ready for it. Tsumiki even asked Utaka to comb her ear, so Utaka awkwardly moved closer to the soft ear to scratch it. However, Tsumiki told him to scratch a little harder, causing Utaka to apologize and ask if it felt strange. Tsumiki told Utaka that the feeling of scratching his ear was slightly different, but Utaka thought he was doing it too forcefully. So Tsumiki decided to change positions and started scratching Utaka's ear. Utaka blushed and said his ear was fine, but Tsumiki explained that taking care of each other was quite common, and cleaning ears was rather similar to grooming. She realized that this might be a characteristic of werewolves, and at this moment she was playing the role of Akko. So she touched Utaka's chin as she usually did with Akko and said, "You've been conquered, Utaka," causing Utaka to blush. Tsumiki wondered what she was doing. On the way back, Utaka thanked Tsumiki for the special training and decided to go look for Akko. But Tsumiki stopped to sniff him, and Utaka, surprised, asked if this was also part of the special training, to which Tsumiki confirmed before wishing him good luck. Utaka was stunned, thanked her, and left. But Tsumiki was blushing because she had told him that humans should use human greetings. While walking, Utaka happened to run into two of his friends, who noticed his face was completely red. Utaka explains that he's just participating in special training with Tsumiki and is now going to talk to Akko. His friends are incredibly jealous, but our cinnamon roll doesn't realize it and continues on to talk to Akko. As soon as he saw her, Utaka apologized for what had happened the day before, saying that he had been too enthusiastic and had said things like she was really wonderful, but that he was actually serious when he said that. However, Akko asked why he had to apologize because she was genuinely happy to hear those words. Utaka was surprised to hear that, as he didn't understand why she reacted that way. He wondered what to say next and remembered that Tsumiki had said she liked being complimented on her tail, so he started complimenting Akko's tail. But immediately everyone fell silent. Akko blushed and said that Utaka was indeed surprisingly mischievous, but he was surrounded by a group of boys. Later, Utaka reported to Tsumiki that he seemed to have taken the wrong road, and the car was stuck in the mud, so Tsumiki suggested they lift the car out. Even the teacher said they had been very helpful and apologized for the incident. Utaka was about to ask Tsumiki for help, but she had already finished her work. A few hours ago, both Tsumiki and Utaka were ready for the volunteer activity. This was their first outdoor activity since joining the student council, so Utaka was a little nervous but also very excited. After a while, they met up with the rest of the group. Sugimi didn't expect Sanga to join, and he admitted that he wasn't really interested in the activity, but he had to keep an eye on Utaka because it seemed Akko had her eye on him, and who knows when she might use her powers. Sugimi was now certain that Sanga was worried because he was keeping a close watch on Utaka. The group decided to put their luggage in their rooms and meet up later. But Akko asks Utaka if he wants to sneak out tonight, as she wants to talk to him a little. Utaka wonders if this is about the rude comment about her tail. However, Sanga and Sugimi can see that they're misunderstanding each other again. When the girls arrived at their room, Tsumiki liked the scent, but Akko was more concerned about why she was covered in mud, and the short answer was because it was a mountain. Tsumiki started sniffing around, giving Sugimi the opportunity to capture those moments. Tsumiki was excited to discover the soft bed and was about to jump on it when Akko stopped her. Although Tsumiki said she only wanted to try lying on the bed for a bit, Akko dragged her to take a shower. Sugimi felt like she was in heaven witnessing all of this. Meanwhile, the boys suggested playing werewolf, but the harsh reality was that there were only two of them, so they couldn't play, which disappointed Sanga as he had been looking forward to playing it in their room. When people think of training camp, they often think of cooking, and Akko has completed all the preparations, so now it's time to get down to cooking. They'll be making curry using vegetables grown by local farmers. This was her first real-life assignment with her soulmate, so she was determined to showcase her perfect cooking skills to win Utaka's heart. She invited Utaka to taste her cooking, but then performed her famous "ah" move, surprising everyone. Sanga and Sugimi were stunned by the sight, and he called her a dangerous senior for daring to let Utaka taste plain rice. However, Sugimi noticed that Akko's hands were trembling violently, which made her extremely embarrassed at being pointed out and feel the need to mentally prepare herself before doing anything. Meanwhile, Utaka actually started eating and could sense that Akko was trying to convey something through her actions. But before she could understand, Tsumiki had already devoured the rice. She looked incredibly happy, surrounded by flowers, as she praised the taste of the campfire-cooked rice, then told Utaka he needed to eat the prey before it ran away. Utaka gently pointed out that rice couldn't run away. Akko finally realized that Tsumiki was carrying a huge pile of firewood, making Utaka wonder if anyone really needed that much. Then, he suddenly realized that there was no one around them. Senga explained that genjin were actually very rare, and that the school they attended had made them forget about this. In fact, this is how people usually react when they encounter genjin. Utaka intended to help Tsumiki distribute firewood, but with her outgoing personality, she quickly approached and proactively gave firewood to those around her. In just a short time, she once again stood out and was loved by everyone, surprising and impressing Utaka. She was happily delivering firewood, and when she saw someone about to drop a pot of hot water, Tsumiki immediately rushed to catch it. The other person panicked, thinking that her hand had been burned, but Tsumiki calmly explained that she was a werewolf, so her wounds would heal very quickly because rapid regeneration was part of their nature. Everyone around was surprised and thanked her for her help. However, Tsumiki's close friends were worried about her, so when she returned to the group's area, Utaka immediately told her to pour cold water on her hands to soothe the burns. Tsumiki insisted that she no longer felt any pain, but Utaka was speechless, not knowing what he was feeling at that moment. Then, the volunteer cleanup in the forest began. After helping a car get stuck, Utaka said it was impressive that Tsumiki could hear the sound of a car that couldn't move. Tsumiki explained that it's very quiet in the mountains, so it's easy to notice strange noises. They decided to turn back to meet everyone, but Utaka couldn't remember the way. Luckily, Tsumiki reassured him that the mountain was her home. However, it suddenly started raining heavily. Tsumiki hurried on because they needed to get back, while she could still smell the way. But they both slipped and fell down the cliff. Utaka was held tightly in her arms. When Utaka slowly sat up, Tsumiki was already sitting there and admitted that she had been a little careless this time. She asked Utaka if he was all right, and he replied that she had protected him. Tsumiki smiled in relief upon hearing that, and estimated the cliff to be about 6 to 7 meters high. She said it would take a while, but Utaka could rest assured that she would quickly bring him back. Despite her calm demeanor and smile, Utaka couldn't bring himself to smile. After the accident, it started raining heavily, forcing outdoor activities to be suspended. Tsumiki took a thorough shower and noticed that her knee had completely healed, then went back into her room. The girls inquired about her injuries, and she replied that she was completely fine, apologizing for causing everyone worry. The girls admitted they had been very worried, and were extremely surprised to see Tsumiki and Utaka appear. Ako asked what had happened, so Tsumiki recounted what happened after they both fell, how she had reassured Utaka and promised to bring him back soon. Utaka looked at Tsumiki for a moment, then decided to find another way. But Tsumiki stopped them, saying that in this weather it was best not to separate. Furthermore, if they took a different route, they might not be able to find their way back to everyone else. Because of the rain, she couldn't follow smells or sounds as usual. Tsumiki believed that once her leg fully recovered, climbing that 7-meter-high cliff again would be no problem, so returning the way she came was still the safest option. Utaka wanted to let everyone know what was happening, but there was no phone signal in this area. He sat down in front of Tsumiki and told her to hold out her hand. When she complied, Utaka hoisted her onto his back, saying he would try climbing the cliff, but would stop if it became too dangerous. Tsumiki pointed out that Utaka was trembling from the exertion, but he remained determined to continue climbing. Not long after, Tsumiki felt that her wounds had completely healed, so she told Utaka to let her continue on her own. However, this time Utaka was unusually stubborn. Tsumiki reminded Utaka that it would be easier if she carried him, as she was a werewolf and therefore had superior strength, but Utaka still wanted to do it himself, because Tsumiki herself had taught him that. When he had a cold, she told him that Utaka should rely on others when he needed help. And that applied to Tsumiki as well. When she was injured, even though she knew she would heal quickly, she could still ask for help from others, even if only once. Utaka wanted her to know that she could rely on him, because Tsumiki was very important to him. Tsumiki smiled as she looked up at the sky when Utaka said it was just a passing shower. She happily hugged Utaka tightly, but he said they had already climbed up, so there was no need to cling so tightly that it was hard to breathe. Tsumiki just laughed and showed him the way by listening to the sounds around them. She refused to tell anyone else about it because she wanted to keep it a secret so she could remember it forever. She then immediately fell asleep, but the other girls could clearly sense that something had happened. However, Ako was relieved that Utaka and Tsumiki were both safe. After Utaka fell asleep and woke up, he didn't sleep well because Senga had been very worried and had lectured him for a long time. Later that night, Utaka reflected on himself. He felt he might have said too much, even though those were his true feelings. He was greeted by Tsumiki, who asked if he was out for a walk. Utaka replied that he had just hung his towels up to dry, but then one of them flew away and Utaka was too tired to retrieve it. Luckily, Tsumiki readily offered her help and ran off to catch the unruly towel. Utaka was glad she was recovering because when they fell off the cliff, he thought things could have been much worse. Tsumiki suddenly changed the subject and asked if Utaka had found anything he liked in the student council. When Utaka replied that he wasn't sure, Tsumiki suggested they search together. Utaka felt confused by the sudden silence. But she pulled his head closer with the towel and told him it was important, so that Utaka could continue to be himself. Utaka didn't understand what she meant, but only received a warm smile from Tsumiki. Then, Senga and Sugimi observed that Tsumiki seemed even more excited than before, so they were sure something good had happened. At the student council meeting, Eiko praised them for their volunteer camp activities and encouraged them to continue with their work in the student council. Despite the rain today, she was still going to introduce someone to the student council president. Tsumiki mentioned that she hadn't met him recently, to which Akko explained that he was very talented and sought after in both on-campus and off-campus activities. Truly a perfect person. But she said there was no need to worry, even though she herself often got distracted by anxiety. Utaka wondered what kind of person the student council president was, because just mentioning him was enough to throw their perfect senpai into such a state. Tsumiki said that the atmosphere around them had become tense, and when Utaka agreed, she clarified that she was actually talking about the atmosphere being electrified. Because look, the student council president had arrived. And he told everyone to get to work immediately because a wasted second is a second that can never be recovered. Tsumiki's ears and tail were charged with electricity, causing her to blush. Akko was surprised that Tsumiki didn't seem to notice her messy hair, but this made her feel embarrassed. Tsumiki explained that the messy hairstyle was quite stylish, but the situation was completely different. The chairman apologized for causing a small electrical discharge, and then used his meter to handle the situation. A short while later, the electricity in the air was removed, but the chairman apologized again for the late introduction. He introduced himself as a second-year student, Shinto Raisin, who possesses a lightning element dragon genjin. His genjin's nature is an electric current running through his body, and close contact with friction can cause him to discharge electricity. As everyone saw earlier, it sometimes overflows, but there's nothing to worry about because he has an electrical regulating ring. Akko pointed out that when the current overflows, it means he's overworked, but Raisin said that's not a problem. He said they should work efficiently and assign the right person to the right job, and he'd heard about this duo before. The chairman assigned Tsumiki the task of lifting heavy objects, but asked Utaka if he had any special hobbies or skills. Utaka replied that he was still searching, but Raisin was surprised to find that he had none, so he told Utaka to come with him, and he would show him when he saw something interesting. Utaka agreed, but thought it was impressive that Raisin made the decision so quickly. Utaka followed the president with a dignified air, noticing that everyone stopped and stared wherever the president went. Raisin told him not to be so afraid to be himself. The president had actually heard from Akko that Utaka was strong, but pretended to be weak. Utaka didn't understand how she could have said that, but Raisin said that today they would visit different clubs to check the equipment and chat with the members while inspecting the equipment. Utaka encounters Kurohane, who asks where she should take the extra weights. The president explains that they are equipment from the air-conditioned room, as they are kept there so that others can train at the optimal temperature. President Raisin watches Utaka help Kurohane return the equipment to its original location. Utaka found Tsumiki in the air-conditioned room, even though she couldn't stand the high temperature. It turned out she was there to check some equipment. They entered the room, but suddenly everything went dark due to a power outage. Worse still, the door to this room was also electrically operated, so it couldn't be opened anymore. Tsumiki considered breaking down the door, but Utaka didn't think it was a good idea. Tsumiki giggled, realizing she was only joking, and decided to try opening the door another way. Utaka doubted she could do it without damaging the door and suggested contacting someone. He was worried about the room temperature, but since the power was out, it wouldn't get any hotter. Tsumiki checked her phone and announced there was a major power outage. She also found an article about the chairman in the news section next to it, and they both read it, impressed by his presence at a major conference. However, Utaka also felt frustrated at having messed things up and said that the chairman could have brought the equipment much faster or even done something to open the door. Although the chairman had said to put the right person in the right job, Utaka still thought he could be of some help, but now he only felt ashamed. Tsumiki said that his thoughtfulness was one of his best qualities and that he should be proud of it. Utaka was touched and thanked her, but just then, Tsumiki's phone died because she forgot to charge it, though she managed to text Akko, so it was probably okay. Utaka couldn't see anything, and the temperature in the room didn't seem to drop at all. He heard a rustling sound next to him and realized Tsumiki was feeling hot. Utaka worried it would be dangerous for her and suggested opening the door by force, but she said it was fine and pointed out that it was Utaka who looked like he was getting too hot. Because she could see in the dark, she approached and helped Utaka loosen his collar to make him more comfortable. But at that moment, the chairman used electricity from his body to restore power to the room, and the lights came back on. Tsumiki was standing very close, so Utaka panicked and screamed, which caused the chairman to come and check on things. Seeing the two of them standing so close together, Ryzen concluded that this was exactly what Akko had said about Utaka being a bold young man. On the way outside, Ryzen told Utaka that even though he didn't have genjin powers, he still completed the tasks the chairman assigned him with agility. Ryzen thanked Utaka for helping him realize something and shook his hand. The rain started to intensify, so Ryzen decided to end his work for the day. However, he remembered something related to humans and genjin, but decided not to reveal it for the time being. With Halloween approaching, Utaka and Tsumiki are decorating the student council room, themed around the holiday, while President Ryzen is still busy working. Tsumiki asked Ryzen if he wanted to help with the decorating, but when he asked if they really needed help, she replied, no. Ryzen said he had higher priority tasks to attend to, so he wouldn't participate unless absolutely necessary. She asked him if he hated Halloween, but Ryzen replied that he neither liked nor disliked it, and asked what the purpose of decorating the room was. He explained that the number of items in the student council room had increased recently, so it would be more efficient to keep only the truly necessary tools in the workspace. Ryzen further explained that he didn't need a Halloween watch because every 10 minutes his body emitted a slight electrical current, allowing him to tell the time without a watch. However, he politely admitted that it was just his personal opinion and wanted to hear Tsumiki's opinion as well. Tsumiki replied that Halloween is Halloween, and that this is what people do on Halloween. Utaka realized she was trying to justify herself by repeating the word. But Tsumiki went on to say that since this was a once-a-year event, why not have some fun, Chairman? Ryzen couldn't believe she was allocating her time based on what was fun or not. Needless to say, the two of them were complete opposites. Unexpectedly, Tsumiki's hair became electrically charged due to Ryzen's periodic electrical discharges. And he once again proved that he didn't need that silly watch. The chairman left because he had another appointment, while Tsumiki fumbled to fix his messy hair. The student council room was now completely decorated, and even Mire was pleasantly surprised to see it. Ryzen told her that it was all Tsumiki's doing. She also thought the clock was cute, and Ryzen reiterated that it was Tsumiki's idea, even though he had previously said it wasn't necessary. Mire noticed that the usually serious student council president seemed a little flustered, but she didn't say anything. Maintaining his usual work pace, Ryzen asked if she had any problems. So Mire explained a misunderstanding she had discovered in the cultural festival budget report. Ryzen took responsibility for resolving the issue. Seeing Mire blinking repeatedly, he even offered to turn away so she could put in her eye drops. She apologized and explained that she wasn't allowed to take off her glasses in front of others, but still thanked him for his concern. However, Ryzen told Mire that she didn't need to apologize, as those were rules she was obligated to follow, and it was wise to be cautious given her unique nature. He explained that this was also why he let others handle electronic devices like computers, because if he accidentally caused a short circuit, all the data would be erased, and that would be a waste of time. At the end of the conversation, Ryzen assured Mire that he would bring the revised report later so she could go get her eye drops. She thanked him, realizing that Ryzen was truly serious about his genjin nature. Chairman Ryzen arrived to call Mire, but the group of students were taking a group photo. The only male student in the group asked Raisin for permission to take a quick picture, while Mire explained that she was only participating because she had finished all her work. However, the chairman couldn't understand why everyone was so flustered. Nevertheless, Tsumiki was delighted to see Raisin appear as she challenged him to a sumo paper match to teach him a lesson about not taking Halloween lightly. Even though the game had absolutely nothing to do with Halloween, this was a fair match as no one was allowed to use their genjin abilities. Chairman Raisin calculated the time in his head using his natural electrical discharges and concluded that he could last 10 minutes. Utaka gave him some paper and a pen, while Ako asked if he knew how to fold them. But Raisin confidently replied that of course he knew, as he was always ready to face any unexpected situation. The group couldn't understand why someone like him would even prepare for a game of paper wrestling. When the match started, Raisin quickly grasped the gameplay and performed quite well. Ako was delighted to see him participating in an activity with everyone. Ultimately, Tsumiki lost and hid her face in embarrassment, but the president didn't understand what she was doing. Later, he was told that she was disappointed about losing, but he still couldn't understand why she cared so much about winning or losing, in a game where winning wouldn't do any good. Tsumiki then asked, "Isn't victory itself a reward? Because victory brings joy and happiness." But she was reminded that she hadn't won and therefore didn't receive that reward. After the next electrical discharge, Chairman Raisin left, but Utaka called him back right outside the school hallway. Utaka offered him some candy because it was Halloween, but the chairman just stared at Utaka. Utaka asked if he didn't like chocolate, but Raisin replied that wasn't the reason. He said he shouldn't have let his emotions get the better of him like that, when he had no intention of winning or even playing. But for some reason, he became completely engrossed in the game, which was truly unexpected. The chairman asked if Tsumiki was always like that, as he felt she could instantly make him catch up to her pace. Utaka replied that Tsumiki only did what she wanted, and that was what was so great about her. Occasionally, there are times when she seems to be proactively creating opportunities to make friends, which is also great. Someday, Utaka hopes he can be like that himself. Hearing this, Chairman Raisin decided to accept the chocolate, as sugar is very good for concentration. After all, Chairman Raisin walked into the decorated student council room. He never thought he'd one day intentionally look at his watch, but he smiled and said it was quite a surprise.